The story begins in a certain house. Right now here several men are dragging a woman and a girl along with them. They are clearly doing this against their will. They turned out to be the mother and sister of a guy with blonde hair. He tried his best to stop the villains, but unfortunately he was too weak for this. Suddenly the hero opened his eyes and saw an unfamiliar ceiling in front of him. It seemed that everything he had just seen was just a dream. At the same time, he did not immediately come to his senses and realize this, so he sharply jumped out of bed and called his mother. Only then the guy realized that he had woken up. Now the hero couldn't understand where he was. It wasn't even his body and he had no idea what this place was. Suddenly his head began to hurt very badly. It seemed that old memories from real life began to return to him. In fact, he was one of the warriors of the past who entered the dimension of immortals to fight a mythical demon. Unfortunately his entire group fell into a trap. Scenes of the death of his comrades appeared before his eyes. It seems that only he was lucky to be reborn in another world. In the past his name was Yi Fusheng. In fact, everything was a little more complicated. Two personalities were combined in this body, a young and rather weak guy, as well as one of the strongest cultivators of the past. Now he called himself Yi Tian. Suddenly, someone knocked on his room, and he didn't want to talk or see anyone right now. It turned out to be a young and attractive girl. She turned to the guy and asked if the young master had woken up. Her name was Yi Mushin. She was the manager of Sandy's company and came to take care of him, and she was also going to help him in all his affairs. The hero immediately made it clear that he was not happy to see her. He knew that she was here only to monitor everything and report this to her superiors. But in fact, the girl was simply fulfilling the request of her master. By the way, he told her that everything would be very simple. How did it all turn out this way? As a result, Yi Mushin found herself a hostage to the situation. She had to do everything as she was ordered, so she gives the hero a certain document and a special black card. Once Yi Tian signs this paper, he will be able to use the endless amount of funds that are on this credit card. The girl recommended that the guy agree, because then he would have huge reserves of funds at his disposal, but the hero simply knocked this thing out of her hands. This made the guy very angry. Do they really think that he is still not good enough for them not to throw him away? The manager didn't know what to do. She's just following her master's instructions. If the young master breaks off the friendship, then that's bad. But it was still difficult to argue with the fact that this was in fact a bribe. An influential family was ready to pay a lot of money so that everything went according to their plan. At the moment, Yi Tian has 3 years, and while he still has the opportunity to become stronger, he is required to go to a special place to obtain his combat profile. All this time the hero was in the hospital. The guy decided not to waste time, and as soon as he had the opportunity, he began to meditate. It immediately became clear that his body was now in a very weak state, and at the same time he needed to speed up the cultivation process as much as possible. Centuries of experience had its advantages. The hero knew that for this he just needed to find suitable exercises. Right now he is doing this. Suddenly he finally succeeds. This technique was simply ideal. It was previously called the technique of 9 transformations. Those who train it can become as powerful as a rock. Even if their skills are not much stronger than their opponents, they still gain a significant advantage. But in order to use this technique normally, it was necessary to comply with certain conditions, the main thing being the presence of an impeccable body. This was indeed a problem, because even in his previous life, Yi Tian had not been able to unleash the full potential of this technique. And in this state it will simply be impossible for him to do this. First he needs to somehow improve his physical condition. A few days later, the hero finally recovered and was able to leave the hospital. He put on his school uniform and went to school. Today, as usual, he was late for class. Right now the teacher was teaching his least favorite subject, namely mathematics. The young woman was pleased with the teacher. From her look one could immediately understand that she did not like the guy. The teacher started yelling at him, because who would even allow him to enter the class without permission, and his classmates laughed. He was particularly unlucky today. The woman really had something to be angry about, because Yi Tian was always late for her class. It seemed that he was just mocking her. This time her patience ran out and she wanted to take the hero to the teacher's room. Today she wants to get him expelled. Only one of his classmates stood up for the guy. She was sure that he didn't do it on purpose, because her classmate was a very kind person. The teacher didn't want to hear about it either, how could he do it on purpose if this student had already been late a dozen times? However, the hero's girlfriend insisted on her opinion. If the woman doesn't believe her, then let her at least listen to Yi Tian, because he wasn't even given a word. The teacher agrees, but only a certificate from the hospital will convince her that the hero did not come on time due to illness. To her great surprise, Yi Tian just happened to have such a thing in her pocket. He actually came later for a good reason. Because of this, the girl became even more angry. She could not believe that this bully was telling the truth. The paper was probably fake. But no matter how she looked, it was impossible to dig into it. The certificate was indeed signed by a real licensed doctor. In the end, it was only thanks to his classmate that the guy was finally able to sit down with his partner. He would be very grateful to this girl. She looked very nice and claimed that she hadn't really done anything special. Any good person would have done the same. A classmate asked the hero how he was feeling now and why he was in the hospital. He replied that everything was fine with him now and his health was excellent. A few minutes later, the lesson was already coming to an end, and the teacher had another very important announcement about extracurricular activities. As it turns out, next week is their second anniversary in the city. According to the order, the 3 best students of the second year will go to the island for a week. After this, all the students began to rejoice, although they understood that only 3 of them would be worthy, but everyone must try their hand. In fact, everything was a little more complicated. They would choose from the best second-year class in the whole country. The students wondered how they could become the best. After that, everyone turned their attention to the hero. Apparently he was not the most popular student in the class, rather the opposite. One guy stood up from his desk and suggested expelling Yi Tian from the class. He would definitely drag everyone to the bottom, so they would definitely not have a chance to win. The rest of the children unanimously supported him. They all wanted the hero to be transferred to another class as soon as possible or even kicked out of school altogether. The only person who supported the guy again was his girlfriend. She was sure that they could not do this to him. However, at this moment Yi Tian looked at her and asked her not to interfere. It became clear from his face that he was not upset at all and he had a plan. He would be able to stand up for himself. The guy himself doesn't mind transferring from another class. But are all his classmates sure that there won't be a person more stupid than him? The student who proposed this idea argued that the hero is not just the worst in their class. He is actually the most terrible in the entire school. Yi Tian was not angry at all, but simply asked him if he was so confident in his words. Besides, such statements need to be at least substantiated with something. The schoolboy responded to this by saying that he was ready to even put his own life on the line. He had no doubt that the hero was the worst of all those he knew. This is exactly what the guy wanted. Now he had a real reason to prove to everyone around him that they were all very mistaken. He would force them to change their minds. After that, the debate died down. All the students just looked at each other and thought about how this dispute could ultimately end. After this lesson there was a big break. All the children went to the cafeteria to have lunch. Yi Tian was no exception. The hero was getting ready to go alone, but suddenly he heard the voice of a girl behind him. It turned out to be his friend. Her name was Lin Long. At first the guy thought that she needed some help, because usually girls were never particularly interested in him. But in fact, his classmate really wanted to have lunch with him. Yi Tian happily agreed and looked quite happy. After that, the couple went to the dining room together. They chatted pleasantly on the way there, and the evil classmate was nearby at that time and was going to take revenge on the hero. When a guy and a girl walked together, everyone around said that they looked like a very cute couple. It must be cool when your girlfriend studies with you in the same class. Because of this, Ling Long was quite embarrassed. After all, they were just friends for now. Yi Tian actually blushed too. It was clear that he was also shy. At one point, the hero notices that his pockets are empty and tries for quite a long time to find something in them, but he was unsuccessful. After this, the guy turned to his classmate and said that he had a small problem and needed to step away for a couple of minutes. It turns out that he accidentally left his wallet in the dorm room. Now he needs to go back there and pick it up. Yi Tian promised his friend that he would return back in just a couple of minutes, and she could go forward. He would soon catch up with her. After that, the hero, without waiting for an answer, quickly ran to the right place, and the girl shouted after him that she understood everything and would be waiting for him at the table. The guy lived in an ordinary room for 4 people. There was quite a bit of space, but in fact this was not the main problem. The worst part was his neighbors. One of them was right now trying to find Yi Tian to force him to wash his clothes. There were 2 roommates in total, and both of them constantly mocked the hero. At some point one of them breaks down and goes in search of him. But they didn't have to do this, because the guy had already come into the room himself. He wasn't going to bother with them and just wanted to quickly deal with the hooligans. But at first the guy simply politely greeted his neighbors, but the men were clearly not happy with this. One of them immediately started shouting at him. Why the hell had he been away for so long? Where could he hang around for so long? There was work for him. The man tried to force Yi Tian to wash his dirty laundry. He should do it as soon as possible if he doesn't want problems on his own. At the same time, the man also threw some metal utensils towards the hero, but the student was not afraid and easily dodged the throw. The roommate never got an answer to his question. How did this brat dare to hide from him when he had been looking for him for several hours? Suddenly a person grabbed him and tried to pull him away. It turned out to be a student who lives in another room. He was already very tired of these screams and fights. Because of this, their hostel was constantly being punished. He could get the impression that only idiots live here. The guy asked his neighbor to control his anger, but the elder didn't even intend to do this. Did this weakling really think that he could control him? Immediately after this, the hero intervenes in the conversation. He was not going to offend any of the normal people, so he orders the offender to let the schoolboy go. But the man felt his absolute power. The guy who wanted to calm him down was called Zhang. Apparently he had some problems with his head because of which he thought that he could become a hero. In addition, the roommate's hands have been itching for a very long time. Right now he wants to let his anger out. This was the perfect reason to do this. Most of all, he still wanted to kick Yi Tian, so he first attacked him with his fists. At that moment lightning appeared all over the hero's body. The guy easily dodged such a slow attack in his direction, and after that he carried out an instant counterattack. As a result the man missed a blow to the stomach. The elder didn't even understand what happened, and meanwhile the hero was already behind him. Now he's going to throw him over himself. Everything turned out as Yi Tian wanted. The blow was very powerful and the man hit his head on the hard floor with all his might. Zhang was very surprised when he watched this picture. What was this fool doing? Because these people would want to take revenge on him anyway. However, the guy apparently wasn't afraid of this at all. He was already tired of the constant bullying from them. His 2 neighbors were called Wang Xiang and Lu Ran. The hero asked Van how many socks he thought he had to wash over these 2 years. Let's assume that there were 100 pairs in total. Now Yi Tian is going to give his offender 100 slaps. He clearly deserves it. Besides, it's not that much for an idiot like him. It turned out that the hero was not joking at all. He sank lower and began to hit the man in the face. He wanted to immediately begin to carry out his sentence. Van couldn't come to terms with what was happening. How did this brat dare to hit him? Is he really so confident in his abilities? Now he should take revenge. But as it turned out, this is not at all easy to do. The guy continued to count from 1 to 100 and each time this was accompanied by a strong blow to the man's face with his palm. After some time, a whole crowd had already gathered near their room, because usually it was Van who mocked everyone around him, but now it was completely the opposite. When Yi Tian counted to 30, his arm was already tired. This man's face was as hard as a concrete wall. Maybe that's why he is so stupid. But there were still as many as 70 slaps left. The hero suggested that Zhang continue his work, because he, too, had to constantly endure these 2. But from the guy's face it immediately became clear that he was not very interested in this. After all, he still had to live in this hostel. However, Yi Tian insisted on his own, or the student wants to be kicked right now. He should stop being afraid of everything. Zhang had to choose the lesser of 2 evils, so he came to his senses a little and decided that he would still have to give the bully a couple of slaps in the face. At the same time, his fear did not go away. The guy very slowly began to approach Van. Apparently in any case it would end badly. Their neighbor lying on the floor, for obvious reasons, did not like this very much. Out of despair, the man decides to grab the guy's hand. The bully was going to bite her with all his might, but he fails. Zhang, by some miracle, managed to pull her back thanks to his quick reaction. The hero was very amused by what he just saw. His offender looked like a stupid and wild dog that only knows how to bite. After this, Wang completely loses his mind. The man rushes at Yi Tian. shouting that he is going to finish him off right now. However, the guy was still much stronger, so he simply gave the man his 31st blow to the face, and then continued to count further. Eventually, his roommate's face turned as red as a tomato, so the man had to admit defeat and apologize. The hero is already quite tired of doing this, so he decides to spare Van, but only on the condition that the bully stops humiliating people around him. In fact, the man at that moment was ready to promise anything, so he immediately throws himself on his knees and swears with all his heart to become good. After this, Yi Tian finally takes away what he came here for and goes to the dining room. He also calls Zhang with him. The crowd that had gathered was a little surprised. These two had never really been friends before, so why were they acting like brothers now? Lu Rong immediately ran up to his comrade to find out how he was feeling. It was clear from the man's face that Wang was furious, but he lied that everything was fine. In the dining room, Zhang finally decided to ask the hero how he managed to become so strong in such a short time. Today he was able to fight very well. Yi Tian explained this by saying that he was very tired of the constant bullying from others, and there is only one way to stop this: you need to become stronger. The guy understood this, but he never managed to get an answer to his question, because it is impossible to become stronger simply with the snap of a finger. Suddenly they heard that Lin Long had called them over. She had already taken a table for her classmate and had been waiting for him for quite a long time. A classmate asked the guy who this person was with him, and the hero introduced her to his dorm roommate. Now they will often appear together. The girl greeted Zhang with a smile on her face, which made him a little embarrassed, but his friend was lucky. The beauty from the university took a place for him in the dining room. A couple of minutes later the food was already in front of them and the guys with a huge appetite began to dine. Nothing foreshadowed trouble. When suddenly Yi Tian's tray of food flew from the table straight to the floor. It turned out to be one of the most influential students of their school. He learned about the situation with Wang and came to investigate. The hero only managed to move back at the last moment so as not to get all his clothes dirty. The bully asked him where he suddenly got balls from. At the same time, the guy was not taken aback, but immediately got up from his chair and grabbed his offender by the clothes. They all should learn something. Now he is not a weakling. Zhang was very worried at this moment. Okay, those two idiots from the dormitory, but this student has great connections. If you fight with him, there may be consequences. Yi Tian also understood this very well, so he decided to simply show off his new abilities, so that next time people like him would think several times before pestering him. To do this, he took the most ordinary plastic fork and told him to look carefully at what he could do thanks to such a fragile little thing. After this, the hero, with enormous force, sticks the cutlery directly into a thick wooden table, while the plastic did not break, but pierced the furniture right through. After this, the guys leave, because if they are not welcome here, then it will be easier to find another place to calmly finish their meal. At that time, the hooligan was lying on the floor in surprise. He looked at the hole in the table for a long time. He could not understand how this was possible. Zhang asked the guy why he didn't hit him after all. Did he really not want to? He replied that in fact it's better to always keep a cool head and act rationally. After that, they went to the park right next to the school and sat under a tree. Their friend was surprised whether they would really eat right here. After all, the place looked completely unsuitable. Yi Tian, in turn, said that you just need to wait a little. In a couple of minutes they will have everything they need. It turned out that the hero, while still in the cafeteria, noticed the admiring glances of the other students at the school. This could only indicate that they, too, would want to become stronger. Soon a large crowd of people gathered near the guys. They brought them food and drinks. Apparently each of them at least once faced bullying from hooligans. One guy in the crowd thanked Yi Tian for putting Wang in his place. In fact, everyone present would not mind doing it themselves. And after that, all the students in chorus showed a desire to become stronger. They wanted the hero to help them with this. Everyone saw hope in him. The guy didn't mind. First they could train with his friend. Zhang W was surprised after such words, but did not refuse. Yi Tian assured him that everything would be fine. For this he put some of his spiritual power into his friend's body. This would help him become much more capable. The energy really helped. The first person who tried to knock Zhang down did not succeed. It seemed that there was a chasm between the two in terms of physical strength. The guy could easily stop his opponent's blows with his palm. and after that also twist his hand so that the opponent was in a grip. At the same time, Zhang himself could not fully understand where these abilities came from when he managed to become so strong. Yi Tian explained to his friend that he simply stimulated his potential a little. However, most of these abilities arose only because of him. Several other people from the crowd were also eager to try their hand at Zhang, maybe they would do better. But after a few minutes, all those who fought with the guy were lying on the ground, none of them managed to even touch the enemy with a finger. The hero's friend still could not get used to the fact that all his movements had become so dexterous, and his blows so accurate and strong. Now the people from the crowd were finally convinced of their choice. They asked Yi Tian to make them as strong as Zhang. They no longer had the strength to endure the bullying. The guy replied that he would definitely help everyone, but in the meantime, if they listen to him, they can count on full support, then no one will dare to touch them. He also appointed his friend as a conditional assistant. Now he should talk more with these people. It is very important to have a big and strong heart. Zhang happily agreed to help. He would definitely do everything in his power, and the hero thanked him and said that he sincerely believed in this. In fact, although he was a modest guy, he has excellent physical abilities. If you give him a little help with his development, he can become an excellent right hand. Suddenly the hero began to remember his past. Before he controlled the celestial dimension, the wind and clouds as one whole. Who would have thought that an ancient demon would attack him from an ambush, and that the ancient warrior would die and end up in the body of an ordinary teenager? In this world, the aura is very thin and not suitable for cultivation. Fortunately, the newly opened Shanhai allows it to be accumulated. Since fate has given him a second chance, Yi Tian is obliged to draw as many conclusions as possible from the mistakes he made in his past life. Suddenly his thoughts are interrupted by a classmate. She was in a hurry, and her face looked excited. Apparently she wanted to say something important. The girl warned her friend that the guy whom he put in his place in the dining room today is very dangerous. Most of all, he now wants the hero to be expelled. In fact, the guy understood this perfectly well. That bully's name was Xiaoyu. But Yi Tian was not at all worried about this, but simply asked his friend if she believed him. Lin Long was very angry about this. Why is her classmate acting like a fool even in this situation? He needs to stop acting like a child. However, she still decides to trust him and goes about her business. Today they are going to meet in the library after class. Zhang overheard their conversation and envied how cool his friend was, because even the beauties from the university were worried about him and even invited him to meetings. Hardworking students go to the library and some to tutors, while the lazy ones laze around in their hostel. The hero arrived here even earlier than his girlfriend, so Lin Long had to spend a few more minutes searching for him. Because of this, the girl got a little angry, because they agreed to meet at the entrance here, but for some reason Yi Tian is acting like a fool again. First of all, a classmate drew attention to the books that the guy was counting here. She was surprised why he chose novellas. Yi Tian replied that these are not just novels, they are comprehensive literature that includes everything from forensic science to jokes. Especially this book of classical power, it was simply incredible. The guy didn't even think that in a place with such an aura there were mentions of cultivators. Lin Long decides to conduct a small test for his friend. Since he is so confident in his knowledge, he can easily cope with a couple of questions. After all, it was only 7 o'clock now, and classes ended at 6. There was no way he could read all the educational material in such a short time. This was clearly just a blatant excuse, and so the first question was to explain Newton's first law. To the great surprise of his classmate, Yi Tian easily gave his answer to this. It seemed that he knew Newton's first law by heart. It was truly incredible, because before this guy had difficulty remembering even the simplest words. How he managed it now. Lin Long decides that this is all just a coincidence, so he needs to try again. He must have just been lucky. The easiest way to prove this was with the help of a history textbook, because such books are full of large and long episodes, and if Yi Tian is lying, then it will immediately become clear. To do this, the girl took out one of the largest history textbooks. Right now her classmate needs to retell the topic that they were assigned for the next lesson. However, the hero replies that remembering key points is incredibly boring. He wanted to retell the entire book, from the first to the last page. At first Lin Long didn't even quite understand what he was talking about. Did he really want to say that he remembered absolutely every page from this book? even the smartest people wouldn't be able to do this. However, after a few seconds, she agrees, but there was no condition. If Yi Tian misses even one word, then today she will be on duty in her place. The guy immediately after this began to retell the ancient history of the first chapter of Chinese culture. Oddly enough, he actually spoke exactly as it was written on paper. This went on for quite a long time. The hero did not miss a single word during the several tens of minutes of his story. Because of this, Lin Long was even more surprised at how he managed to do it. Before, she often helped him with his homework, because her classmates' performance left much to be desired. For a second, she even thought that in front of her was a completely different person. There was no other way to explain such crazy progress. Yi Tian, meanwhile, continued the story about ancient times, and where the first silk appeared, as well as about the system of the monarchy and officials in the government. At the same time, the hero was also reading a completely different book at the same time. This did not stop him from talking about the management of the Air Force during the war, as well as about the management of the Division of Labor. About an hour later, he finally finished his monologue and asked if her classmate had any other tests for him, but the girl was so surprised that she was simply confused. As it turned out, in the divine dimension, reading skills were one of the most important factors in the growth of your spiritual power. After all, if even one word is wrong, you will have to pay very dearly for such a mistake. No one is born invincible. However, Lin Long advised her friend not to become so arrogant, because even with such abilities, he had not yet passed the exams. To do this, he needs to learn all the answers. She just has some examples that the girl prepared herself. First, he should solve all these problems. The guy agrees, but it was clear from his face that he was not entirely interested in learning template answers. Suddenly the hero notices one interesting detail. Throughout her classmate's book there were red marks in a very neat font. This gave her some kind of aesthetic pleasure. Meanwhile, the girl sat behind her and looked towards Yi Tian with a tender look. Since when did he become so smart and attractive? Suddenly there was some noise in the library. It seemed that all the people around at one moment began to quietly whisper among themselves. The reason for this was a very beautiful girl with long black hair. Her name was Fang Miao. She was considered one of the most popular students in the school. Lin Long became curious about what was going on there, so the schoolgirl got up from her seat and went to look, and ordered her classmate to sit and continue studying. Almost all the library visitors came running and stood around the beauty. It was like fireflies flocking to a light source late in the evening. Each of the guys invited Fang Miao to sit next to him. Most likely, if the girl sat next to one of them, it would be the happiest day of his life. However, the beauty walked near all the tables to the very end of the room. Only there she noticed a suitable place for herself. It was exactly the same table where the hero was sitting, but Yi Tian told her that it was already occupied. The girl should look somewhere else. Fang Miao made it clear with all her appearance that she was not interested in this. She wanted to sit right here, so she confidently did what she had in mind. At some point, the beauty notices a textbook on medicine. It's clear why she couldn't find this book for so long. The guy had it all this time. The girl just wanted to take the thing for herself, but the hero turned out to be not as pliable as the others around him. He grabbed her hand. Fan Miao was very surprised and a little embarrassed. No one usually behaves like that with her. It seemed that this schoolboy had no manners at all. In turn, Yi Tian did not see anything wrong in his behavior. It seems to him that this particular girl does not have a drop of decency. The beauty continued to look at him with a very disdainful look, and the guy still allowed him to take the medical textbook, but he was unlikely to help her. Their conflict was interrupted by another event. Right now one of the most popular guys in the school came into the library. His name was Tin and he had a huge bouquet of red roses with him. It was immediately clear that he was going to give this gift to Fang Miao, but from the expression on her face it was clear that she was not happy to see him. Tin, before turning to his beloved, looked at the hero, who this guy was and why the beauty was sitting with him at the same table. And after that he gave a beautiful expensive bouquet to the girl. He wanted to invite her on a date to a cafe. Would she agree to go with him? But that was not all. The guy wanted to say something very important. But why don't they stay together so that no one interferes? Fang Miao is already tired of these conversations. If Ting has something to do with her, then he should tell him about it now. She is not going to go anywhere. The guy understands that there is no other way out and kneels down. he says that he loves his chosen one very much and sincerely asks to give him at least one chance. When the girl realized that she was now being offered a relationship, she immediately ordered this idiot to get off his knees. But Tin did not listen to her and continued to stand his ground. The beauty had no choice but to grab his hand and wanted to drag him far away. The guy, in turn, was persistent and claimed that his intentions were serious, promising to marry her immediately after graduating from high school. These words completely drove Fang Miao crazy and she knocks the gift out of his hands. He should stop wasting his time, the girl will never agree to this anyway. Tin is not used to hearing refusals, he always gets what he wants, so he has to ask the beauty not to leave. Fang Miao no longer knows how to get this idiot to unhook, she needs to find some way, so she lies about the fact that she already has a fiancé. Tin couldn't believe what he just heard. Even if the girl doesn't like him, then there's no need to deceive him under the guise of an imaginary partner. Within a few seconds, the disappointment on the guy's face gave way to intense anger. He tried to find out the name of her fiancé and why this impudent man was better than him. It was bad because Fang Miao really lied, she just needed to come up with some quick way to get rid of her pursuer. The beauty had no choice. The only person who could be suitable for the role of her partner was Yi Tian. She didn't know anyone else present. At this time, the hero simply continued to calmly read one of the short stories. He could not even think that in a few seconds he would be announced as the groom of the girl whom he saw for the first time in his life. As a result, he was incredibly surprised. Everyone around also could not believe it, how one of the most popular students in school could date such a weakling. Now all the males suddenly began to envy Yi Tian, would really like to be in his place at this moment. Ting seemed to be the most shocked of all, his body began to shake with anger, and his hands subconsciously clenched into fists, veins even appeared on them. The hero soon realized that he was again dragged into some kind of ridiculous situation, since when did he even have a bride? Frustrated by the refusal, the guy orders everyone around to immediately find Yi Tian and bring him here. Fan Miao could not understand what he was doing. She tried to stop him, but Tin got even angrier. He really wanted to know how such an idiot managed to steal his beloved. At this moment, Yi Tian rises from his chair and says that no one needs to bother searching, it never occurred to him to hide from someone. After this, the guy with his head held high says his name. From his behavior it became clear that he was absolutely not afraid. Lin Long was very surprised by this behavior. Before she always thought of the hero as a weakling, how did he manage to change so much? After all, now the guy behaved completely differently, but very little time has passed, he is not at all like what others say about him. Ting, in turn, was already flexing his fists. He once again asked the schoolboy standing in front of him if he was really the one called Yi Tian. The hero immediately confirmed this. And immediately after that, a popular high school student grabbed the guy by the shirt. He wanted to know if the girl was lying about the fact that they were dating. However, Yi Tian did not give an exact answer, he only asked in response, even if so, what was he going to do to him? Several people immediately began to support Tin, they were simply afraid of his connections and all as one accused the guy of having the impudence to take his girl away. As a result, Tin laughed arrogantly. Now he wants the guy to kneel in front of him and ask for mercy, the only way he had a chance to remain intact. The high school student also had to promise that he would never come close to Fang Miao again, but Yi Tian was not going to carry out this ridiculous order. Suddenly, several schoolchildren ran up to the hero from behind and twisted his hands. These were the henchmen of his rival, they wanted to show that their leader never jokes. At this moment, everyone who was watching from the side began to whisper among themselves, each of them arguing whether Yi Tian would kneel or not. In the end, most assumed that he was a weakling and would do everything. Moreover, Ting had all the most famous and cruel students of the school on her side, and now this guy has angered them, he will have huge problems. Fan Miao was very worried at that moment, she didn't want events to unfold this way, she felt very sorry for the hero, but the girl didn't know what she could do. Yi Tian did not resist when several people tied him up, he only replied that if they wanted someone to kneel, then he could easily arrange it. The girl breathed a sigh of relief. Everyone around decided that now this weakling would simply kneel down and be released. This was still better than going to the hospital. Yi Tian's offenders stood next to him and laughed. Each of them was sure that this brat would right now fall to his knees in front of them and beg for mercy. One of them was tired of waiting and was going to speed up this process, but the hero noticed this and immediately stepped aside so that the hooligan's hand would not touch him. After that, he deftly grabbed the pen lying on the table and began to twirl it in his hand. Now the hero was going to fill this object with his power. Thanks to this, he managed to knock the bully off his feet. The handle flew into his leg at high speed, which is why he was unable to maintain his balance. As a result, the student ended up on the floor. None of those present could really understand what was going on, because Yi Tian's movements were too fast. But the hero did not stop there. Thanks to his unique technique, he was still able to control the object that absorbed a piece of his energy. With the help of these manipulations, he managed to control the pen like a weapon, so Yi Tian dealt with all the offenders without even touching any of them. And all the hooligans could only scream helplessly, because none of them could understand who was beating them all the time, whether this brat was really behind it. The hero, in response to this, was surprised with a grin. Weren't they the ones who wanted someone to bow their head in front of another right now? This was their idea. This only angered the villains even more. Now they seriously intend to beat the guy with all their might. How dare he do such a thing? It was funny for the guy to listen to this, because they are unlikely to be strong enough to hurt him at least once. Ordinary weaklings will never cope with someone like him. Immediately after this, Yi Tian seemed to instantly disappear from the place where he was a second ago, causing the two attackers to fall to the ground. Everyone else was very confused after this. Now the hero had no difficulty in dealing with them with the help of his spiritual energy. All this took the guy no more than a few seconds. In the end, all the hooligans were lying on the floor. None of them managed to leave even a scratch on Yi Tian's body. These students really wanted to bring someone to their knees. Now they can enjoy their position as much as they want. However, even after this, several people still wanted to continue the fight. This guy thinks too much of himself. He is running into huge problems. The guy, in turn, continued to be surprised at how ordinary hooligans could allow themselves to think that they were on the same level with him. After all, even if each of these idiots spent 10,000 years training, none of them would still be able to even come close to his level. Fan Miao watched everything from the side and couldn't believe her eyes. This man had some kind of extraordinary energy and was reminiscent of ancient warriors. At some point, bright blue lightning appeared in the hero's hands. Right now he was going to finally decide the question of who should bow his head. But the guy decided to do this in an unusual way. The same lightning appeared on his legs. This allowed him to jump high into the air. And after that, with lightning speed, with the help of several kicks, Yi Tian once again knocked several people to the floor. Now none of them showed any desire to get up and try their strength again. It was better to calmly accept their defeat. The high school student turned to Ting. At this moment the popular school student was trembling with fear. Now he realized that this guy was not a fool at all, but was simply hiding his potential. Yi Tian replied that this was just modesty on his part, and it wouldn't hurt him to develop such a character trait either. It certainly wouldn't hurt him. However, Ting didn't care at all whether the hero was actually stupid or some kind of genius. Today, in any case, he would beat him with all his might. The guy is already pretty tired of these threats. Oh, these mortals, being just little insects, they allow themselves to talk to him like that. The next moment, the popular schoolboy decides to attack from behind. The hero did not see this, so Fang Miao decides to help him and tries to push him to the side. Yi Tian was not at all afraid of such a weak blow, but at the same time he could not offend the girl, so he covered her with his body. The beauty asked this idiot if he had really gone crazy. He should quickly stop this performance and leave. She still doesn't need such a groom. However, Ting was still not going to retreat. He didn't care who this high school student was to her. In any case, he wanted to kill him more than anything else. Fan Miao looked at the hero and thought that before she could not even imagine that such a modest person could be so cool and attractive. Ting, meanwhile, was again heading to Yi Tian. It seems that he was tired of living. Now he will show him where there is a place for such a nonentity like him. To his great regret, he had no chance at all. With his actions, this fool only completely angered the hero. Therefore, as soon as the student was about to hit him, the guy immediately disappeared right from under his nose, and in his place only small bolts of lightning remained. It was very stupid of such a weakling as he to continue to count on victory. Objectively speaking, he had no chance in the first place. Someone from the crowd noticed that it looked like the hero was now trying to copy the legendary fist technique, but Fang Miao noticed that this was not copying at all. Because previously no living person had been able to copy such a technique, it was in fact a unique original. In the end, Yi Tian at the last moment decides to take pity on Ting. He simply gives him a strong slap in the face. It was because the bully offended his fiancée. And after that, one more, as a bonus for the fact that they dared to make fun of him with the whole crowd. Next time they should think several times before doing this to someone. And if this happens again, the hero will break the schoolboy's legs so that his entire gang will henceforth treat others with respect and not even think about repeating something like that. After that, the guy called his girlfriend and invited her to leave this place. She happily agreed. She already had enough events for today. Fan Miao was very interested in Yi Tian. It seems that he is far from an ordinary person. Now the beauty wanted to get to know him better. At the same time, the girl decides not to wait for the right moment. She immediately runs out after the guys and shouts after them, asking them to stop. The hero asked her if something had really happened. Fang Miao actually wanted to apologize for what happened. It seemed to her that the main blame lay with her. But the guy was not angry at all. He understood perfectly well that she came to the library for a reason, but to find a way to get rid of her illness. The girl was very surprised when she heard this, because she had never had to tell anyone about the state of her health. The hero asks her not to bother her head with this. He just has good intuition. What was more important was that he knew a method that would help cure Fang Miao's illness. After that, they separated. At some point Yi Tian noticed that his friend looked strange. Perhaps she was worried about something. As it turned out, Lin Long was very scared that time in the library. She was worried about her classmate when he fought against a whole crowd. In response to this, the guy simply patted his classmate on the head. She shouldn't worry so much, because he has enough strength to stand up not only for himself, but also for those who are dear to him. Residents of the hostel watched this whole picture from their windows. The lonely guys became very envious. How they dared to do this right in front of everyone. After all, not everyone has girlfriends. When the hero returned to the dormitory, the first person to meet him was Zhang. He looked incredibly happy and had a large basin of water in his hands. It turned out that their friend had completely cleaned their room. Now the place looked much better. It seemed that it had never been so clean. Zhang was very tired and was about to go to bed, but one thing worried him. Wang and Lu went somewhere immediately after Yi Tian humiliated them. Is it possible that the men will return? The hero was amused by this question. Is his friend really so afraid of these two idiots? They are so weak that they could not even resist two schoolchildren. But the guy was actually quite afraid of them. Hooligans are really a little crazy. It costs them nothing to come at night for revenge. But in any case, today was a beautiful day. It is quite possible that these two were so scared that now they do not even dare to think about coming here. Yi Tian suddenly put on a very serious expression. If his comrade really cares about this, then he will never allow anyone to bully him again. We should not forget that society itself is very cruel, so a comrade must learn to stand up for himself, and the most important thing is to remain a good person. Zhang was very inspired by these words. He even got out of bed and promised his friend that he would definitely adhere to exactly these principles in his life. A few hours later, night came. The schoolboy was sleeping sweetly, and the hero decided not to waste time in vain and cultivated right now. Yi Tian had been doing this for 3 days already, but this body was still too weak to train 9 divine transformations. In a previous life, he was unable to rebuild his body for this technique and was defeated during a hollow world war. This led to the destruction of his soul. Fortunately, he managed to be reborn in this world. Now that fate has given him such a chance, he simply needs to become stronger. That is why the hero continued his meditation with all his might. He carefully recited ancient prayers and asked the aura of heaven and earth to lead him to the right path. Based on ancient records, the 9 divine transformation is the first technique of the 9. Using it, one can use the aura of the earth to form a golden body. In this technique, physical strength should become limitless. If cultivation is successful, then with the help of energy you can stimulate your body to reveal its full potential. But unfortunately, Yi Tian has not yet succeeded in this. After all, his physical condition was absolutely unprepared for this. Moreover, the aura of this world turned out to be even weaker than one could imagine. It was difficult to even begin to cultivate in this direction. Damn, if he had chaos beads, the hero would have started deeper training long ago, and would have been able to reach the 3rd or 4th stage. At the same time, the guy did not want to give up at all, although he felt enormous fatigue throughout his body, but he incredibly wanted to try again. As it turned out, this was a huge mistake. During the next cultivation attempt, the hero felt severe pain in his chest, after which he coughed up blood. Yi Tian decides that he should still rest, but he didn't feel like sleeping at all. He liked looking at the big glowing moon in the window more. Another failure upset the guy very much. Apparently he needs to take some kind of break, otherwise his body may simply not be able to handle it. Right now, there were 2 men standing in the corridor of their dormitory. It was the same Wang and Lu. It seemed that they still had the courage to return for revenge. Van was afraid that someone might notice them, but his accomplice claims that everything will be fine. In any case, they will have a release in a couple of days. Until then he should keep his mouth shut. Suddenly the man remembers why he came here. He really should talk less and do more. He incredibly wants to punish the offender. The hooligans got closer to the room in which the guys were sleeping and looked out the window. It seemed to them that they had both been sleeping for a long time. Therefore, the men decide that this is the perfect moment for an attack. The couple broke down the doors and climbed inside. Zhang slept on the right bunk, the hero, apparently, on the left. First of all, the villains wanted to deal with Yi Tian. The hooligans climbed up to him with iron fittings. They wanted to finish off this brat. At first glance, the guy was lying under the blanket, because his bed was definitely not empty. First the man wanted to break his legs, and then hit him on the head. At some point, Zhang woke up because of the noise. The guy was very scared when he saw what was happening. He wanted to help his friend, but the fear turned out to be stronger. And the men continued to beat Yi Tian with all their might with a smile in their eyes. It seemed that they were enjoying every second. That situation with the slaps hurt Wang very much. At some point, they got tired of doing this. One of them jumped down and asked the other to remove the blanket and see whether the guy was alive or dead. He stood with his head held high and admired himself. This stupid idiot dared to insult his master, which is why he needed to be put in his place. But at some point, Lu realizes that something is wrong, because they beat the hero very badly, and he never even screamed or moved. As it turned out, in fact, there was no one in the guy's bed. Apparently he heard that someone was approaching and set up a deception using a blanket and several pillows. As soon as the hooligans realized what was happening, the lights in the room immediately turned on. Yi Tian stood not far from the entrance and asked who they were not looking for so eagerly. What are these 2 idiots doing in their room in the middle of the night? Have they both suddenly become sleepwalking? No, most likely these 2 are running into trouble again. Lu, ask your guy what to do, because they have been declassified. In response to this the man ordered not to panic. This brat is stupid and will not do anything to them. Suddenly Zhang turned to the hero from the top shelf. He told his brother that these hooligans had weapons behind their backs. Now he had better run away. However, Yi Tian was not the kind of person who likes to run away from the battlefield. On the contrary, this situation provoked him even more. Centuries of experience in battles taught him that running away from the battlefield is a bad decision. If in a previous life he had run away during a world war, then it would have continued for a very long time. Van took the armature in his hands with a joyful face. As it turned out, it was his birthday in 3 days, so he decided to start celebrating a little earlier. And nothing could bring him more pleasure than beating this brat. He would still have to pay for the humiliation that he brought upon him. At some point, the hero turned to the man. If he so badly wants to settle scores with him, then let him at least tell him what he understands about it. The bully replied that he was going to beat Yi Tian to a pulp and break all the bones in his body. This is how he wants to take revenge. Therefore, the guy right now needs to kneel down and beg for mercy, and also call Van Master 100 times. If he succeeds, then so be it, they will leave him alive. However, the hero decided that a dog like this villain is not worthy of being considered someone's master, so he again uses his technique with blue lightning. At that moment, the guy began to move with incredible speed. The bully didn't even understand where the blow came from, and the student disappeared from sight. Out of despair, Van began simply swinging his iron stick in different directions, so he wanted to catch his opponent at least once. But as expected, it didn't work out to hurt anyone or anything. Yi Tian managed to easily dodge this ridiculous blow and send the bully flying with one strong leg attack. Because of this, the man hit his back against the wooden table with all his might. It was very painful, his whole body began to shake. Truly a hero, it's lucky that his opponents are so worthless, because this physical body is not at all suitable for fighting more powerful enemies. When one of the men was already severely wounded, the second tried to take advantage of the moment and ran towards Yi Tian, hoping to hit him with the reinforcement. But this time the bully doesn't succeed either. The guy makes a quick dash in his direction and knocks the enemy down. Lu turned out to be an even more worthless opponent than his accomplice. This man looked so pitiful that it was sickening to watch. At some point, he was so scared that he simply fell to his knees and began whining that he was in great pain and scared. But the second hooligan turned out to be stronger. He overcame the pain and got to his feet and gathered the determination to continue the fight. Revenge was still strong in his soul. Then the man once again rushes with an iron stick at the hero. He could not understand that he was not even close to his equal. At this moment, Zhang saw an opportunity to bring at least some benefit to his friend. The guy jumps on top of the guy, and he covers his eyes with his hand, and also blocks the ability to move normally. Now Yi Tian could calmly finish off the bully. However, he managed to escape from the grip and even throw Zhang over himself. It turned out that she was still capable of something, and the guy was a little in a hurry. After that, the hero got seriously angry. Okay, even when the two of them are trying to kill him, but when they touch people dear to him, then after that the jokes end. Yi Tian concentrates a huge amount of his spiritual energy in his right fist, and then punches the opponent in the stomach with all his might. The attack turned out to be incredibly strong. Because of it the man flew several meters back. Blood began to flow from his mouth. It was not clear whether he was alive or not. And the guy immediately after that turned around and looked at the second hooligan. With his whole appearance he made it clear that this enemy of his would be next. At that moment, Lu was so frightened that he was speechless, and for several seconds he simply repeated the same letter in an attempt to say something. After a few seconds, he finally comes to his senses and falls to his knees. The man loudly asked for forgiveness and begged him to be spared. The hero agrees, but on the condition that if the bully takes his accomplice and they leave this hostel together forever, they should never return. This decision completely satisfied the attacker. He once again thanked the guy for pardoning him. After this, the man takes his beaten accomplice and leaves. Now we can say with confidence that these two will never bother them again. The next morning, Feng Miao and her friend were out for a morning jog. The sun was already quite high, so it was getting a little hot. Because of this, one of the girls says that she is very tired, she has no strength left, and she needs to take a break right now. Fan Miao noticed that she herself wanted to start running in the morning to lose weight, and her friend replied that she would simply eat less today. Well, then the girl with dark hair will eat a couple of buns for dinner, and the second one will not be able to afford it if she gives up her idea right now. At some point, schoolgirls notice Yi Tian. He was also jogging, and for a better effect, the hero tied weights to his legs. Feng Miao was surprised what her friend was doing here. From his appearance you couldn't say that he was a fan of something like that, rather the opposite. Her friend knew about the story with the groom, so she noticed how handsome this guy is, not only handsome, but also loves to play sports. To this she was told that in fact there was nothing between them, but the girl with blonde hair thought that her friend was simply shy. And if this is not the case, then perhaps Feng Miao will give up such a handsome man to his best friend. The girl with dark hair flatly refused such an offer. The friends noticed that the hero looks very tired, his whole face is covered with sweat and he is breathing heavily. Fan Miao recommends that he rest. Is he really not taking care of himself at all? As soon as the guy paid attention to them, something bad happened to his body. He felt severe pain in his chest. With every second the pain grew stronger and stronger. He could hardly stand on his feet. It seemed that he was about to lose consciousness. His friend ran closer and asked what happened, if she could somehow help Yi Tian, and what was going on with him. But suddenly the hero returns to normal. In appearance you can't tell that a second ago he was writhing in severe pain. Fan Miao is strongly advised by his acquaintance not to forget about the exercise technique. If the hero continues to run like this, he may simply die from exhaustion. The guy thanks the girl for the advice and apologizes for the trouble. Now he needs to continue his training. In fact, he felt sick at that moment because his concentration was broken the moment he was cultivating. He was interrupted at the most inopportune moment. it looks like he will have to start all over again. It's good that there is always the opportunity to try again. But for this it was necessary to restore at least a little strength. Now Yi Tian was passing near the construction site. Suddenly an idea arose in his head. He entered the territory and turned to one of the workers. The guy came up with a story that he was a student. His teacher asked all the students to taste real life. The man believed the hero and noticed that apparently today's teachers don't even try to teach children, but immediately send them to difficult work. The builder agrees to give Yi Tian some work for half a day. They are just a little short of people today. They will definitely find something to do. It seems that all the other workers are busy right now. Why shouldn't he take over carrying the bricks? In fact, the builder was a little uncomfortable, because this work was considered one of the hardest, and he trusts this to a schoolboy. The man asks the hero to take breaks after each approach, and also to be as careful as possible. There is still a risk of being seriously injured. But Yi Tian, to the surprise of everyone around him, easily lifted 2 huge boxes of bricks. From the outside, you couldn't say that this guy was quite strong. The hero did not stop for several hours. The rest of the workers could not believe their eyes how this schoolboy was able to complete such a volume of work. He was really good. He managed to do 3 times more work than an ordinary person. I wonder what his secret is. At the end of the day, Yi Tian had transferred more material than their best employee of the month, and for that you can give a bonus. The hero's plan was to load his body with physical activity to the maximum. This gave a good result. But this was still not enough. In order to begin cultivating the 9 transformation technique, one needed to bring the body to ideal. At the same time, there was a chance that after working with bricks for such a long time, he would be able to begin the first stage of cultivation. He should definitely try it. Yi Tian noticed that the other workers were very tired from work, so he advised the guys to rest. He was quite capable of handling it on his own. The men did not immediately understand what was going on, but it was stupid to refuse. If this schoolboy wants to do all the work for them, then let him. After this, the hero calmly continued his work, but at one moment a car drove right next to him at high speed, and she stopped right next to him. A guy with a tattoo came out. His name was Lao Zhou. It became clear that he was looking for some old man. There was also another man with him. They behaved very impudently and turned over everything in their path. Apparently the villains did not come with good intentions. Lao Zhou turned to Yi Tian and demanded that he tell him where the elder was now, because they were about to have an important conversation. But when the hero did not answer the bully, he, in turn, was indignant. It seems the brat is new here. Where is his respect for his elders? Suddenly the guy with the tattoo swings his leg and hits the basket with bricks. Apparently in this way he wanted to knock the student down. However, Yi Tian was not at a loss and reacted instantly. He hit the bully with a stick on which the material was hanging. Because of this the bully flew several meters away. Lao Zhou was furious over this situation. How did this sucker dare to hit his master? He must be tired of living. The hero at that moment only thought that he was very lucky, because he did not start training right now, in which case he would have felt very bad again. At that moment, the chief builder ran out of his office. Most likely, it was the guy with the tattoo who was looking for him. First of all, the man asked Yi Tian if he was okay. This student only came to work for half a day. No one wanted him to get hurt. Everything was fine with the hero. He was only infuriated by the fact that he could not begin to normally cultivate in the direction of 9 transformations. Lao Zhou quickly rose from the ground and ordered his assistants to immediately grab this brat and drag him here. But this turned out to be not as simple a task as it might seem at first glance. The student seemed to be a surprisingly very capable and strong fighter, who was able to deal with a crowd of hooligans in just a few seconds. Soon all his enemies were lying on the ground and begging for mercy. The head builder didn't know what to do. The guy with the tattoo was a very influential person, and this student did this here. The man couldn't think of anything better than to tell the story that Yi Tian was actually his relative and had come to help literally for one day. However, Lao Zhou was not at all interested in why he should care about someone's relatives, so he kicked the construction worker. And the hooligan was not going to stop there. The hooligan immediately ran up to the man lying on the ground and tried to punch him. Fortunately, Yi Tian manages to stop the villain. He blocked the blow of the guy with the tattoo with his palm. It was too much. Because of this, Lao Zhou became even more angry, and the chief builder continued to calm him down and assured him that he was an ordinary student who worked for free. But this interested the hooligan, which means this guy doesn't even work here, in which case he is ready to invite such a capable fighter to his gang. The guy with the tattoo was willing to pay him 8,000 yuan a month. Such an offer could not be refused. Come on, this is your chance. The chief construction worker calmed down a little. Apparently this situation will not worsen further, and now Lao Zhou can finally do what he came for. As it turns out, today is the last day of the month, which means payday has arrived. The workers were very happy when you heard. They worked so hard that they even managed to forget what day it was. However, the boss gave his wards only 10,000 yuan. This would only be enough to pay the salaries of 2 people. He argued that this was due to difficulties in the company. The man turned to Lao Zhou and tried to convey to him that everyone now really needs money to feed their families, and these funds are not enough. Also, one of the workers reminded the guy with the tattoo that they actually entered into an employment contract, which indicated the monthly rate. Thus, the boss violated the terms of the contract. Now everyone present has a reason to sue. Lao Zhou didn't even want to hear about it, so he kicked the man with all his might. If they continue to behave like this, they will no longer receive a penny. In addition, at the moment the construction is not even half completed, and in general the guy with the tattoo is too kind to them, because he gave them at least some money. If any of them want to argue with him about something, then please, but they should understand that after this they will not be able to continue a quiet life. After that, the boss left. Now all the workers found themselves in a very difficult situation, and now there were no more salaries to be seen. Of course, everyone needs money. Some had a pregnant bride who was about to give birth, and some had a daughter who went to college. This Lao Zhou is just an evil thief who doesn't consider workers as normal people and never misses an opportunity to humiliate someone. One man got very angry because of this. The others immediately began to calm him down. He shouldn't do stupid things. The chief builder recommends Yi Tian to go home quickly. If the boss sees him again, he will not let him go so easily. At this moment, the hero was thinking that if he had at least half of his previous strength, these freaks would not have survived until dawn. At this time, the hooligans were driving in their car and discussing how this fool dared to argue with their boss. Is he really so stupid that he argues with the hand that feeds him? Apparently that worker thought that he was in a fairy tale, in which everyone gets what they deserve. When the construction is finally over, they will properly punish this upstart. As for that agreement, you can simply pretend that it never existed. The main builder was a stupid old man. He would never dare to go to court. Next, the bandits discussed where they would drink this evening. One of them really wanted to go to one place. Apparently he liked some beauty there. However, the guy with the tattoo at one point thought that the hero's name seemed somehow familiar to him. Had he really heard it before? Suddenly, Lao Zhou remembers how Ting sent him a letter last night. The high school student ordered Yi Tian to be removed as soon as possible. After this, the gang leader took another look at the photographs that were sent to him, after which all his doubts finally disappeared. Therefore, he ordered the driver to immediately stop and go back to the construction site. It turns out they still had work to do there. This chance had to be taken advantage of, because who knows when they will have the chance to meet him again. Meanwhile, the customer was having fun in an expensive club with several girls. His exciting activity was interrupted by a phone call. Lao Zhou informed him that he had already discovered his target. This student was right now at one of the construction sites for which he was responsible. Since things have turned out this way, Tin orders everything to be done immediately. The hero should not live until tomorrow morning. The bandit needs to do everything quickly. As it turned out, the guy with the tattoo is quite afraid of his boss. He even almost dropped the phone when he raised his voice a little. This is why Lao Zhou promises to do everything as soon as possible. Ting will receive great news from him soon. There is no chance for him to make a mistake. After this, the bandit began to think about how it would be easiest for him to remove his target, because the matter was very serious. And he also wondered why an ordinary student didn't please his boss. At first, the guy with the tattoo didn't even expect that he would have to kill Yi Tian. Meanwhile, the hero wanted to find a way to help these visiting workers, because these people suffered greatly and actually really needed money. Moreover, they remained very kind right now. One of them invited Yi Tian to have dinner with them. Their elder had just prepared food. The guy happily agreed. A little food and now definitely wouldn't hurt, but suddenly they were all alarmed by some sound from behind. At that moment, everyone turned around sharply and saw a very strange picture. A truck was driving straight towards them at great speed. It turned out to be Lao Zhou along with his accomplices. He didn't want to bother too much and decided to just arrange an accident with the participation of the hero. One of the workers rushed to help Yi Tian. The man did not understand the whole situation, so the guy had to act quickly. These people might get hurt. The hero pushes two workers aside and is left alone against a car that was driving towards him at great speed. In fact, this was an excellent opportunity to overcome the limits of this body. If everything went as it should, then after the accident, Yi Tian would be able to begin the first stage of cultivation. At one point, a minibus crashes into a pedestrian at high speed. The speed was very high. An ordinary person would not have survived this. Because of this, the hero's body flew several meters away. Now he felt that he had finally reached the first stage of 9 transformations. After what they saw, the rest of the workers finally lost their nerve. They ran to the car and decided to take revenge for the guy. From Yi Tian's appearance, it was safe to say that he had left this world. From the outside it looked very sad. After all, he could have been an ordinary guy who worked at a construction site, and now he is destined to die at such a young age. Now they simply have to take revenge on their boss for such an act. This time Lao Zhou will not get away with it. This is too much. The crowd picked up stones and bricks to break the windows of the truck. If they think they can escape, they are very mistaken. These bandits haven't even fully realized what they've done, because a few minutes ago another person died because of them. The driver, who was in the car at that moment, was very scared for his life. The man began to zealously search for something on his phone. In fact, Yi Tian had not died. Right now he was in his subconscious and was trying to move to a new stage of his spiritual development. At the moment, he couldn't believe his luck. He had managed to acquire the legendary chaos energy. Ancient legends said that such energy is a unique force from ancient times. It is purer and stronger than even in the divine dimension. This ability allowed the hero to strengthen every element in his body several times. First of all, you need to take care of the bones. The ancient gods and demons used to have such power. It is said that in ancient times before the creation of the land of heaven there were 100 demons and 100 gods. In the end one of them killed all the others. It was the strongest who invented this type of energy. The guy has finally reached the first stage of 9 transformations. Now it will not be difficult for him to punish the villains. Thanks to the newly acquired strength, the guy's physical body at some point began to heal. All the wounds and abrasions on his body instantly disappeared. At some point, Lao Zhou got out of the car and asked the crowd what they were allowing themselves to do. How did these people dare to create problems for him again? The chief builder was shocked by such impudence. This bandit at least understands what his driver has just done. Because of him the young man died. The man demanded an explanation from the guy with the tattoo, but the villain did not see the need to report to these beggars. It was the student's own fault for standing in the wrong place. Apparently this old man needs to explain everything on his fingers. In fact, his life is now worth less than their car, so they should first calculate the damage to the truck. After hearing this, the chief builder could no longer control his anger. This bastard completely pissed off the man. Now he doesn't care how many connections this bandit has. However, Lao Zhou himself was not afraid at all and was completely ready for a fight. This old fool talks too much. He should be taught a good lesson. To do this, the bandit took a stick from the ground and severely beat the main builder. From the scoundrel's face one could understand that he really liked to take advantage of his position. As a result, the man was severely injured. These abuses continued for quite a long time. This villain really was a monster. No one from the crowd dared to intervene. Each of the workers understood that if they took the initiative, the situation would become even worse. Now it was better to just accept it. At some point, the guy with the tattoo got tired of beating the poor man and he proudly declared that everyone else should fill out this picture as best as possible. This will happen to everyone who doesn't respect him. And after that, the bully decides to deliver his final blow with an iron rod, but still there was someone present who had the courage to intervene. This man moved so fast that a huge wall of dust rose into the air. Lao Zhou did not even understand at first what had just happened. As it turned out, it was Yi Tian. He somehow managed to grab the villain's improvised weapon. Now the guy had a clear advantage. All the people around also couldn't believe their eyes at first. how a simple schoolboy managed to survive after such a terrible accident, and still move like that. Some were even frightened by this picture. In fact, it might seem that in front of them now was not an ordinary person, but some kind of deity from the ancient world. But the vast majority soon came to their senses and people began to sincerely rejoice that the hero somehow managed to stay alive. Lao Zhou in turn became very angry. This brat is causing too much trouble. If the accident did not kill him, then they themselves will kick him to death. The gang leader orders his wards to immediately grab the guy and teach him a lesson. This idiot fully deserves such treatment. They don't need to restrain themselves. Soon Yi Tian found himself completely surrounded by enemies, but at the same time the hero looked quite confident. Had he really managed to achieve such strength that would allow him to win now? The builders could not believe that this monster was so terrible that he intended to deliberately take a person's life, and the men also shouted at the guy and asked him to run away. However, Yi Tian had no intention of leaving anywhere. Now these bandits could not escape him. It would be simply wasteful to miss such an opportunity to punish bad people. Lao Zhou was all glowing with happiness. It seemed to him that after this everyone would know what a serious person he was. The villain was counting on enormous popularity in criminal circles. Unfortunately for him, the hero was not going to die here now. Moreover, he was now incredibly strong after receiving new abilities and achieving the first stage of a unique technique. Now his entire body was covered with bright blue lightning, and enemies surrounded the guy from all sides. The numerical advantage was clearly not on his side. But Yi Tian remained confident in his abilities. He easily manages to dodge the blow. Such slow attacks would never reach him. At the same time, the guy simultaneously carried out a counterattack. With one strong sweeping movement, he hit all the bandits at once. Because of this, the enemies scattered in different directions. Their leader stood a little further and could not believe his eyes. Where did this brat get such strength? Now Lao Zhou did not know what to do next. All his people were beaten to such an extent that they could not stand on their feet. The situation was simply terrible for him. Suddenly, one of the men was still able to get up. His whole body was shaking in pain. He approached his boss and asked for help. At that moment, the guy with the tattoo was very frightened. It seemed to him that his subordinate had gone crazy. Could it be that the hero's power had such an effect on him? At the same time, the bandit did not stay on his feet for even a few minutes. After walking a couple of meters, he lost consciousness and fell to the ground. Lao Zhou was finally convinced of Yi Tian's strength. His power was on some completely different level. Most likely not a single living person could resist him. The builders also did not fully understand what they had just seen. Each of them believed that this student had died, because after such an accident there was practically no chance of life. The hero, meanwhile, turned to Lao Zhou and asked if he really didn't know how to fight. The bully, in turn, ordered him to stand still. However, the guy was not going to follow the orders of this idiot. Now that he had dealt with his chained dogs, it was his turn. After the guy with the tattoo heard these words, he was speechless. His whole body was pierced by a strong fear. Was he really going to die? The bandit felt a strong sense of hopelessness, because he realized that his strength in any case would not be enough to resist. The guy kicked his enemy in the face. For a start, this should be enough. This goat needs to come to his senses a little. This caused Lao Zhou to fly several meters back. The blow was incredibly strong. He deserved it anyway. It seemed to the hero that the guy with the tattoo wanted to tell him something, but he didn't hear anything because of the strong wind. He should repeat it. But because of the missed attack, the bandit could not come to his senses. He was simply trembling in pain, and blood began to flow from his mouth. Now he could not even get to his feet. This guy is incredibly cruel. If the bully does not admit defeat now, then there is a high probability that he will not be able to leave here alive. Yi Tian, in turn, was not going to stop, because Lao Zhou was actually a terrible person. People like him need to be taught normal behavior. The guy with the tattoo could not offer absolutely any resistance, so they promised to compensate the hero for that accident, offering 200,000. The workers were even more surprised every minute. Was it really the same schoolboy whom they saw during the day, when he managed to turn into such a cruel monster? Yi Tian did not pay attention to this. He turned to the bandit and agreed to accept his generous help, because the guy was still very kind. After that, The senior builder immediately ran up to him and said that this money was enough to cover all expenses, there was no longer any need to mock the bully. Yi Tian agreed, but warned Lao Zhou that all the funds should be here today. If he fails to fulfill this condition, then he should blame himself. The bandit, of course, agreed to everything. Now his main task was to survive. He even offered the winner a cigarette, which he himself lit. Now a respected student should just wait and smoke a cigarette, and the money will be here in a couple of hours. Literally an hour later, one of the hooligans ran to the construction site with a backpack. He was in a hurry as best he could and had already brought 200,000. After this, the villain asks if they can leave, and the guy says that he will not count the money, but if there is not enough here, then it will not be difficult for him to find it. Lao Zhou finally thanked the generous student once again for having mercy on him. It was very polite of him. After that, the whole gang was finally getting ready to leave. Today all these bullies had possibly the worst day of their lives. However, that's not all. Yi Tian didn't actually clarify one thing, so the villains couldn't just run away just yet. As it turns out, the hero forgot to say that he would also confiscate their truck, which is why the gang will have to go on foot. The bullies had to agree to this too. They all suffered incredible humiliation today. Lao Zhou was furious. This is not the end. The guy picked up a bag of money and wanted to give it to the main builder. These funds and the car should be used as wages for the workers. However, the man did not want to agree to this. They could not take it all, because the hero suffered more than anyone else at the hands of these scoundrels. Yi Tian did not want to argue on this topic and simply handed the bag into the hands of the chief builder. He originally started this for the sake of ordinary people. At the same time, it was not necessary to forget that the guy with the tattoo could not just come to terms with this whole situation. They needed to lay low for a while. Now Yi Tian was already at the early stage of the 9 transformations of demons and gods. His thinking was gradually changing, which was why he was experiencing attacks of cruelty. The news that some construction workers had fled from their place of work quickly reached Lao Zhou. The men simply disappeared somewhere. The leader of the gang was very angry because of this. He already had a lot of trouble today, and now these little people have escaped. They need to be returned immediately. Although the hero has only just entered the first stage of 9 transformations, he has already acquired unique abilities. Now he should find a suitable place to test his new powers. To do this, it was necessary to move away from prying eyes. The forest, which was located outside the city, was perfect for this. There was just a good tree here. Yi Tian poured a huge amount of his spiritual energy into his left fist. This power could be seen even with the naked eye. And after that he hit the tree trunk with all his might. Because of this it shattered into small pieces, and not a trace remained of the huge oak tree. This attack turned out to be so powerful that it destroyed everything in its path within a radius of several tens of meters, and huge walls of smoke rose around. The guy was happy when he saw all this, although he understood that he had become much stronger, but such power was beyond all expectations. The awakening of 9 transformations of demons and gods amazed the imagination. The hero could not even imagine that after the impact so much dust would remain. But this situation also had a downside. Now he was all dirty. He needed to find a place where he would have the opportunity to swim. There just happened to be a clean lake nearby with normal water temperature, and now, by pure chance, Feng Miao was swimming here. The girl came here in the hope that she would be able to calmly freshen up and be alone with herself, but suddenly she heard some noise nearby. The beauty never expected to see her friend here. How did he end up here? And the guy, unsuspectingly, was glad that he had found such a good place. As it turned out, these two were not alone here. There were also 2 strangers nearby, and from their conversation it became clear that they were looking for someone. One of them told the other that he saw men's clothes near the lake. They should definitely go there and check. Maybe they will find answers there. Yi Tian, meanwhile, climbed into the water and calmly washed himself off the dust, but suddenly he got the feeling that he was not alone here. Suddenly a hand reached out to him from the water. It turned out to be his friend. She ordered the guy to be quiet and not turn around, because they are not alone here. Right now someone is coming here. The couple hid behind a stone, and 2 strangers walked nearby and tried to find the person who owned the clothes lying nearby. The hero could not understand what was happening here and asked his friend about it. She tried to explain that she was just swimming here and had no idea who these people were. Suddenly, one of the strangers heard their conversations and loudly asked if there was anyone here. It seemed that they had been discovered. The couple needed to look for a way out of the situation. Out of surprise, Yi Tian accidentally placed his palm on Fang Miao's leg, which made the beauty very embarrassed that this idiot was allowing himself to do so. The two guys already guessed that someone was hiding behind the stone. If he wants to survive, then he should come out of his hiding place now. At the same moment, the girl became furious because of what her friend had done. She was ready to kill this pervert right now. As a result, the hero found himself in a very awkward situation. He was wearing only funny underpants, and strangers were standing in front of him. Yi Tian tried to play dumb and asked the guy if they had just addressed him, but he just didn't hear him a bit. As it turned out, two strangers were actually looking for some wounded girl here. She was their original target. The hero immediately understood who we were talking about. At that moment he wondered what he should do, save her or let everything take its course. As a result, the guy decides to help his friend and tries to deceive his pursuers. It seemed to him that some woman was running away in that direction. Of course, this plan was far from ideal, but in such a hopeless situation there was no time to come up with something better. The strangers turned out to be not particularly smart, so they completely believed Yi Tian. Now they were about to go searching deep into the forest. But they still wondered why such a brat was here at such a late time, if he wanted to go with them. The hero answered them that everything was fine with him. He knew this area very well and this was not the first time he had come here to swim. They should not worry. In the end, his pursuers left him behind and went about their business, but this school one seemed too strange to them. They had a premonition that suggested that the girl they were looking for was somewhere nearby. Whether that kid had lied to them. Yi Tian, making sure that the strangers had run far enough, called his friend. Now she could relax a little and go outside. However, Fan Miao did not answer anything. The guy approached the place where she was last time, but she was not there. Had the beauty really sunk? This really was the case. Now she needs to be rescued as quickly as possible. The hero immediately jumped into the lake and dived under the water. Fan Miao was already at great depths. She had been lying here for several minutes. We can confidently say that her life is in danger. But when the guy swam closer he noticed that there were still air bubbles coming from her mouth, which meant that there was still hope. Yi Tian pulled his friend out of the water as quickly as he could. Unfortunately the beauty was unconscious. Something needs to be done urgently. To do this, the hero put Fan Miao on the ground. He was a little embarrassed because she was only wearing a shirt. Apparently the girl did not expect to meet someone in such a place. But now there was no time for this. The beauty still had not regained consciousness. She urgently needed to give her artificial respiration, and as quickly as possible. Yi Tian had never done this before, so he was a little worried. The hero leaned over and approached his girlfriend. Suddenly, as soon as there was a distance of several centimeters between their lips, the girl suddenly woke up. It seemed to her that she was being harassed. Therefore, she abruptly jumps up and hits her friend's face with all her might, which is what this pervert was now going to do to her. The guy tried to calm the beauty down and made excuses. Nothing like that had ever occurred to him, and besides, he knows how to heal her. But Fang Miao didn't believe him and continued to panic. He was clearly crazy. She would never trust such a fool. In order to somehow confirm the veracity of his words, the hero fully describes all the problems that have haunted his girlfriend for many years. Now the girl has calmed down a little. Does this eccentric really know about her problem and is even able to cure this disease? But she still had some doubts about her friend. She warned him that if he did something strange, he would not leave here safe and sound. Fortunately, after just a few minutes, the beauty had no doubts left. Yi Tian sincerely wanted to help her. Fan Miao didn't even imagine that he practiced such methods. After all, the girl has been interested in this kind of thing since childhood. Because of her illness, she had to delve into a variety of methods of medicine, because ordinary doctors could not help. Fan Miao asked who her friend's teacher was, but the hero replied that if she wanted to know something about others, she should first tell about herself. The beauty did not want to answer such questions, but only noted that she felt her spiritual energy becoming more and more aggressive with every second. Yi Tian explained to his friend that he had to pour his power into her body, because the aura of this world was too weak. The girl was very lucky that the guy already had a special aura of chaos. Only she can help in such a situation, but at some point something strange happens. The hero fell silent abruptly. He could not understand why he could not adjust the flows in his girlfriend's body. His speech abruptly stopped. Fang Miao panicked a little because of this, and the guy asked her to keep quiet. Now he must use golden needles to rectify the situation. Suddenly they were interrupted by their pursuers. They wandered through the forest for several hours in search of their goal, but found nothing. They had no choice but to return back. The situation was very unfavorable, because when a cultivator is busy healing another person, he is not able to fight. He needs to come up with some kind of plan. To begin with, Yi Tian asked the strangers why they returned so quickly, but he made it clear to them that the one they were looking for had fled into the forest. But this time the pursuers no longer believed in such nonsense. Do these schoolchildren really consider themselves the smartest? Now they are simply delaying time before the moment of their death. Immediately after this, one of the villains rushed with his fists at the guy and his girlfriend, but fortunately they managed to dodge. The situation is further complicated by the fact that the hero spent a lot of energy treating his friend. He needs to find a way to replenish it. Fan Miao asks the guy to leave her and run away, because they are both in great danger now. He should not risk his life for her. Yi Tian didn't want to hear about such stupid things. He has enough strength to get out of this mess. It's just that now the healing process is at a critical stage and they can't interrupt it. The pursuers, meanwhile, fled after them. First of all they wanted to deal with this brat. He should die first. The hero stood motionless at this time. His girlfriend could not understand what was on his mind. Was the plan really to save as much energy as possible? In fact, there were literally a few seconds left until the end of the process of transferring spiritual power, which is why it was impossible to be distracted. But now Yi Tian already had the opportunity to move freely. He easily managed to block the villain's blow with his palm. After that, he kicked the attacker in the stomach with all his might, causing the bully to fly several meters in the other direction. Now Yi Tian could not deny himself anything. It seems that today he needs to deal with a couple of idiots who were minding their own business. Fang Miao was more and more surprised by her friend's behavior. Why such spontaneous decisions constantly came to his mind. But the hero was now busy with something else and he didn't have time to answer stupid questions. After all, he had to protect not only himself, but also his girlfriend. Fortunately, thanks to his unique chaos energy, it was not difficult for him to resist these two pursuers. When one of them saw what technique Yi Tian possessed, he was simply shocked. Could this really be the person about whom legends are made? The ancient tales of this world spoke of a second son who would soon return. This being would come from the dimension of Nyohu. The guy actually had no idea what these villains were talking about, but he had an excellent excuse to get rid of them as soon as possible. But the beauty knew this story very well. Apparently, cultivation methods were also present in this world, but they were structured a little differently. The hero wants to deal with his pursuers as quickly as possible, so he hits one of them with all his might with his hand filled with chaos energy. After this, the strangers were finally convinced that it was better to run away from here as quickly as possible, because such an enemy was definitely too tough for them. The girl asked her friend if he would really just let these freaks leave. Perhaps it would be better to punish them somehow. Yi Tian was currently busy healing her, so a couple of pursuers did not matter now. The beauty agreed with this. Now the guy could finally complete the treatment process for Fan Miao. He took out his needles and began to stick them into special points one by one. His girlfriend was very surprised by this method. Who could teach the hero such an impeccable technique, while his energy is incredibly powerful? The process required a little more time. In the end the guys sat in meditation for several tens of minutes. They could not be distracted for a second. At some point, a large beam of bright blue light fell from the sky directly onto the girl, which meant that her treatment was completely completed. Now the beauty could see for herself. To do this, she just needed to get up and feel the changes in her physical body. In fact, it was not necessary to even stand up. Fang Miao immediately felt her pain instantly evaporate. Could it be that her suffering had finally ended? She was incredibly happy and grateful to her savior. How lucky she was to meet this guy. He did what the best doctors could not do in several years. Now they need to pack their things as soon as possible. After all, the picture looked rather strange and it was deep night outside. Fang Miao felt a little ashamed of her behavior. She shouldn't have treated Yi Tian like that. After all, he turned out to be a very kind person. After that, the girl immediately got dressed, because it was getting cool outside. Suddenly the guy noticed her hairpin. It was a very unusual thing. The hero asked a friend where she bought it. As it turned out, she got this jewelry in a very unusual way. Fang Miao was born along with this hairpin. In fact, this thing was from another world. It was where Yi Tian used to live, or perhaps this was all pure coincidence. The guy was also interested in a question about the Nyohu dimension. Fang Miao, in turn, thought that her friend was simply mocking him, because one cannot achieve such a level of strength and not know such basic things. He should stop fooling around. It is simply impossible to have such abilities as his and not know anything about the laws of this world. However, the hero insisted that he really did not understand anything and asked to tell him in more detail how difficult it was to achieve such a level of power as an ordinary mortal. He didn't know what level of cultivation there was in this world, so now he should listen carefully to his friend, what she would say. It turned out that in this dimension there are only 4 classes of martial arts. Each of them has its own characteristic features. The worst are the representatives of the 4th class. It involves using only arms and legs for fighting. In the martial art they are not even considered beginners. Next came the 3rd class. Although such fighters can feel the existence of the true energy of the earth, they are not allowed to feel it completely. Only now did Yi Tian realize that all those with whom he had to fight until that moment were precisely at the 3rd level of cultivation. People who reached the 2nd class did not differ significantly from the previous one in terms of strength. They were simply given a better sense of the energy of the earth. But once the 2nd and 3rd rank fighters find a way to reach the Ho Tian dimension, they become 1st class. The guy was a little amused that his girlfriend knew so much about the structure of forces in this world, but at the same time she was unable to fight off 2 weaklings on her own. Fang Miao was a little embarrassed and tried to justify herself. Actually, she had already reached the Lingxi dimension. She was just really hampered by her illness. At this moment, the hero realizes that there are also some dimensions. In fact there were 3 of them. They all also differed in strength. How can Yi Tian not know this? If he has already managed to reach the strongest dimension at such a young age, he is clearly faking it. The guy decides to play along with his girlfriend and says that in fact he knew all this, but just decided to joke a little. Suddenly they heard some noise next to them. It turned out to be the girl's relatives. Now they were coming straight here. Fang Miao didn't want her parents to notice her in the company of some stranger to them, so she tries to run away, but the hero grabbed her friend's hand. Yi Tian asked her if she was really that afraid of her relatives. They don't bite. She should become a little more mature. But the girl asked to let go of her hand, because if she was still noticed in such an environment, she would be severely punished. She really didn't want to sit at home for a whole month again. The guy at some point realized that he really looked quite stupid, so he lets the beauty go. She also persistently asks not to pursue her. After that, the hero also got dressed and thought that his girlfriend had this hairpin for a reason. It was clearly destined by fate. Now he wanted to get home to Fang Miao. Perhaps there he will be able to find some other signs, but he still could not find the reason for his appearance in this world. Yi Tian also recalls the last words he heard from his mentor. Apparently they were somehow related to this situation. The elderly man said that his student had to collect 12 flower artifacts and return to heaven, otherwise the guy was destined to lose himself forever. Although this student inherited incredible talent, he was destined for a terrible death. Unfortunately, fate cannot be changed. After that, the old man coughed very hard. It became clear that right now he was leaving this world. The last thing he said was instructions for the hero. Yi Tian must accept his fate, otherwise he will never be able to escape. Now he realized that he managed to find one of the flower artifacts, but where are the others? This means he needs to find all the artifacts. Only in this way will he be able to fulfill his destiny and return to his world. This was destined from the very beginning. Now the guy went to his room. Suddenly he got a bad feeling, because every time he comes back here, something bad happens. As it turned out, this time was no exception. His friend was sitting tied to a chair with socks in his mouth. He was beaten very badly. The hero was in great shock at what happened here. Whoever dared to raise a hand against a person dear to him, he would definitely pay for it. Yi Tian immediately untied Zhang and tried to find out who had a hand in this, whether their former roommates had returned again for revenge. Everything turned out exactly like this. Yesterday these two, along with a group of people, burst into the room and looked for him, but his friend endured all the humiliation and did not say anything. The guy immediately uses his spiritual energy to heal his comrade. He had to go through a lot. How these freaks dared to come here again. The hero promises his brother that he will definitely make these villains pay a price 10 times more than what they did to him today. The next day, the friends were walking along the road to the university. Zhang was still afraid that their former roommates were hiding somewhere nearby and might attack. Yi Tian recommends that their comrade not worry so much. When they are together, no one will dare to even lay a finger on him. At this moment, everyone around them was whispering to each other. The schoolchildren were surprised how such a weakling as a hero could become so tall. The guy heard this and simply smiled. These ordinary people can measure everything only by their appearance. After all, they are incredibly limited. Zhang at some point thought that his friend had really become much more beautiful and smarter. It seemed that he was a completely different person. Yi Tian noticed his friend's anxiety and asked what the reason was. As it turned out, the guy felt worthless compared to the hero. He immediately began to reassure Zhang. He shouldn't worry about it. They are brothers after all, and Yi Tian respects his friend very much. To defuse the situation a little, the guys went to the nearest cafe. The students hadn't eaten anything since yesterday, so it certainly wouldn't hurt to have some refreshment now. The hero called the waiter and asked him to take the order. It turned out to be quite unusual. The guy wanted them to bring him as many as 100 buns. At first the worker did not believe what he heard and asked again, "Is this man really going to eat that much food at once?" Zhang asked his friend to cool down a little, because he did not have the money to pay for half of such an order, but Yi Tian was ready to pay for the food himself. But still, such an amount of food is too much. He is unlikely to be able to eat that much, but 20 buns for each is more than enough. However, Yi Tian continued to stand his ground. If his friend did not want to eat half, then he was quite capable of eating as much as was left. The waiter once again asked if these students were joking. No one had ever ordered as many as 100 buns from them before. Zhang realized that attempts to dissuade the hero were unsuccessful. It seems that now they will really be brought a huge amount of food. The worker turned to the cook and ordered him to bring all the buns they currently have, because a schoolboy had come to them and wanted to eat as many as 100 at a time. Soon the food was on the table. In fact, there was so much of it that it could hardly fit. Could Yi Tian really fit that much? Suddenly, a man appeared among the visitors and invited the others to bet on whether this student could eat such a portion. Each of those present could bet any amount up to 10,000 yuan. If the hero eats 100 buns, the man will increase this bet 5 times. Visitors thought that now they could win easy money. In vain this bettor did not keep his mouth shut. The outcome of this forecast was obvious. The man persistently asked Yi Tian to wait a little while eating, because people had not yet decided on their inserts. However, the guy did not pay attention to this and simply ate calmly. He even invited his friend to place a bet. But Zhang assured his brother that he did not have to eat all this for the sake of entertaining the crowd. In turn, the hero was completely confident in his abilities. The guy can't make a decision for several minutes. This person treated him very well. Now he just needs to believe in him. In the end, Zhang decides that if Yi Tian does not manage to eat all the food in the allotted time, then he will have the opportunity to help. The bettor did not abandon this idea. In this way he will definitely be able to attract more people who are willing to risk their money. Suddenly, a schoolboy sitting at the next table announced that he was ready to make his bet. He was sure that the hero would not cope with this task. This student was ready to bet as much as 10,000. The man did not even expect that there would be someone here willing to risk such funds. The guy with purple hair was simply afraid that these poor people would not be able to place a normal bet, so he decided to join. Yi Tian asked his friend how much money he had with him now. As it turned out, it was quite a bit, somewhere around 5,000. The hero recommends that Zhang bet all this money on the fact that he will be able to eat all 100 buns. Very soon they will collect money from all these fools. The guy completely trusted his brother, so without hesitation he announced that he wanted to make his bet. The man ordered his assistant to write everything down so that later, when these brats lose, they won't try to pretend to be fools. After a few minutes, everyone has already made their choice, and if there is anyone else left, then he should hurry up, because everything starts right now. It seemed to the man who organized all this that if you don't want to earn such easy money, then you are even more stupid than these two schoolchildren. In the end, absolutely everyone except Yi Tian's friend bet against him. This bunch of fools had no idea how wrong they were now. Suddenly the better notices the incredible confidence that came from the guy. Why is this fool behaving this way? Is he really hoping for something? The student, in turn, has already figured out where he will spend the money he won. Since he bet the most, he will end up earning quite a lot. Soon the hero began his meal. Everyone around was very surprised how he managed to cram so much food into himself with such ease. Did he really have a bottomless stomach? The purple-haired guy noticed that Yi Tian had slowed down his pace a little. It looked like his stomach was already full. He had already managed to eat more than 40 pieces. But in fact, the hero felt great. He just didn't expect that this immortal body could so stupidly choke on a fried bun. At some point, the rich schoolboy began to get nervous, because there was less and less food on the table every minute. Because of this, he and Zhang began to argue. Yi Tian asked him not to distract him. Why is there such a rush? He had just started his lunch. It was rude to disturb him. In response, the schoolboy laughed when he heard such words. Apparently this idiot is going to pretend to be sick in the head when he does not manage to eat everything. But suddenly his laughter changed to alarm, because the hero got up from the table and wanted to talk to him about something. Yi Tian's face showed that he was completely confident in his abilities, and he wanted to ask the guy with purple hair what he would do when he lost. He decided to raise the stakes and replied that if he lost, he was ready to kneel down and lick the winner's shoes until they were perfectly clean. The hero was happy when he heard this. It is worth noting that no one pulled this fool's tongue. Right now he will have to do everything he promised. This brat, because of his stupidity, thought that someone like Yi Tian could lose. Now he can only count the number until he loses. The man noticed that this guy was serious about eating the remaining 60 buns, but he was sure that an ordinary person would not be able to do this. It's also worth noting that the hero now has very dirty shoes. If he wins, the rich schoolboy will have a hard time. This student got very excited when he raised the stakes. Now he should stop being so careless and think with his head. The bettor invites him to talk to Yi Tian and cancel this humiliating condition, because the money will be quite enough, but the guy with purple hair is not going to do this. By the way, his name was Qiao. It is not typical for him to renege on his words. Instead, he once again confirms that if he loses, he is ready to lick other people's shoes. Zhang was afraid that this situation was going too far, but his brother asked him not to worry, because this was a great opportunity to clean his shoes. The rich schoolboy was very infuriated by this, so he orders the terms of the bet to be fulfilled quickly. He is already tired of waiting for so long. After a while, all the visitors were shocked. This guy actually managed to eat almost all the buns. Because of this, Qiao became furious and could not control his anger. With his foot, he overturned the table on which there was still some food left. After this, the situation became incomprehensible. Now, in order to win the argument, the hero needs to pick up the buns from the floor, and this is very disgusting. Zhang wanted to immediately put the upstart in his place, which he allows himself, but his comrade explained that this was not necessary. Everything was much simpler. Yi Tian simply asked the waiter to bring him 2 more buns, because he did not need to humiliate himself in order to win the bet. After this, no one had any doubts that the hero would fulfill his promise, and that the rich schoolboy would really lick his shoes. Even the restaurant worker expressed his respect. He would never have thought that the young man was really capable of such a thing. But Yi Tian was simply obliged to do this, because his shoes were waiting for someone who was obliged to clean them to a shine. Visitors noticed that Qiao was trying to escape, which is understandable, because who would want to humiliate himself in front of someone whom everyone considers a weakling? But to his great regret, he was unable to escape. The hero immediately stopped any attempts at such a thing. Where he was going. The man who started all this tried to smooth out the corners. Perhaps the hero will simply forget about everything, and in return they will give him even more money. At the same time, Qiao tried to look tough and ordered to let him go, because his parents are very rich. If this continues, Yi Tian will regret it. Because of this, the guy was angry that this worthless mortal allowed himself to communicate with him like that after he miserably lost an honest argument. He throws the schoolboy to the ground with all his strength. Thanks to his spiritual energy, this blow was incredibly strong. This caused Qiao to bleed from the mouth and seemed to feel severe pain all over his body, and the hero in turn took a chair and sat closer to him. Now the rich schoolboy is obliged to lick his shoes to the condition in which they were still in the store. After all, no one pulled his tongue. And if you promised something, you must fulfill it. These were the basic life principles that Yi Tian adhered to since childhood. But this guy was too proud, he still couldn't come to terms with his defeat. How did this beggar dare to treat him like that? The hero is tired of this chatter, so he decides to teach the upstart a lesson. Someone should teach him at least some moral standards. Xiao was in great pain, his head was between the hard floor and the leg of a man whom he hated with all his soul. He could only scream. Also, the hero's life principles included punishing all those who dare to harm him or people who are not indifferent to him. At the same time, the guy doesn't care how much money such offenders have, or what their status is, they will pay anyway. At some point, several more people burst into the restaurant. Apparently these were people who were supposed to get the rich schoolboy out of the current situation. As it turned out, they were sent by Ting. The hooligans ordered everyone present to disperse immediately. Right now they must complete the task. At this moment, the hero removed his foot from the loser's head. Apparently a few more fools want to feel his full power. And Xiao ordered to immediately grab this bastard and beat him to a pulp. He simply must receive what he deserves for his actions. Yi Tian doesn't bother with them and immediately uses his chaos energy. At that moment bright blue lightning appeared around him again. Thanks to this, he manages to deal with all the hooligans with one blow. In fact, they did not have a chance. As a result, several people turned out to be completely useless. All they could do was lie on the floor and beg the guy for mercy. Several hooligans immediately rushed to their boss to help. If they screw up now, they will be severely punished. In truth, these fools should learn one thing: they will only suffer even more if they continue to mess with Yi Tian. The man who initiated the dispute was very surprised by the hero's abilities. Now he looked like a professional fighter. He just managed to deal with several attackers in a few seconds. He can confidently be called a wolf in sheep's clothing. At the same time, some of the hooligans turned out to be incredibly stupid, because they continued to threaten Yi Tian. Apparently they were completely tired of living. Right now, one of these is rushing towards him with a strong desire to avenge Xiao. This fool was really hoping for something. The hero easily blocked his incredibly slow and weak blow. The schoolboy was shocked by such force. He had never encountered anything like this before. After that, the guy twisted his opponent's arm. Apparently this weakling put all his strength into his wretched blow. How did he get accepted into the gang in the first place? After this, Yi Tian invites the bully to try one trick. Everyone calls it the flight of the penguin. Now the student himself will understand everything. Within a few moments, the weakling flew high into the air. In fact, this was preparation for one special blow. The hero has already put a small part of his chaos energy into his right arm and leg. Now he will teach this upstart some manners. This trick is called the blow of a flying raven. Now everyone present in the restaurant was convinced that it was better not to interfere with this guy. One very pretty girl with blonde hair stood out among them. Her whole face turned red, and her heart began to beat faster. The beauty seemed to be fascinated by this guy. She asked everyone to make way and let her walk closer to him. Something strange was happening to her. Her name was Qin Lan. She was one of the most beautiful students in the entire school, but what was on her mind? Her behavior was very strange. Did she really fall in love with Yi Tian? No other explanation could be found, but how could such a weakling manage to seduce such a beauty? The girl simply could not convey the feelings she was now experiencing. Her whole body at some point stopped listening, and she kissed the hero right on the lips, while the thought of what was happening to her was constantly spinning in her head. At some point, the beauty finally comes to her senses. Her act was really stupid, because everyone at school knew that this guy was Fang Miao's fiancé. Yi Tian was a little embarrassed. This is all too strange. Was the deity just kissed by an ordinary student? Qing Lan was very ashamed of her action. Her whole face turned red like a tomato and she asked for forgiveness for her behavior. And after that she extended her hand to the hero and introduced herself. In fact, she was very glad to meet her. As it turned out, Fang Miao herself was also present here. She couldn't believe her eyes, because she believed that the guy was more than just a friend to her. Suddenly the whole crowd turns their attention to her. Could such a nonentity like Yi Tian manage to seduce two of the most beautiful girls at once? Is she also going to kiss her brother? This is too much. That's exactly what Zhang was thinking about now. But as it turned out, the girl was rapidly approaching the hero not in order to kiss, but in order to remove him with all her might in the face with her palm. For those around him, the situation became completely incomprehensible. None of them could understand what was happening before their eyes. Fang Miao announces that their engagement is off. The crowd couldn't believe that the two were actually in a relationship. This idiot had a unique chance. Yi Tian was embarrassed by this behavior of his friend. Because he did not show any initiative, this girl herself climbed up to him. As it turned out, these two beauties are actually friends. Qin Lan tried to justify herself and said that this was all a pure coincidence. But Fang Miao didn't believe it, because she did everything of her own free will. Now she and this guy have no relationship. The girl with blonde hair asked her friend for forgiveness. She really didn't want this outcome. She was very sorry. Fang Miao pretends that she doesn't care and accepts the apology. Now she wants to leave this restaurant as quickly as possible. Therefore, Qin Lan grabs his hand and runs away, and finally turns to the hero and says that now they must act as if they had never known each other. Yi Tian actually didn't mind this at all. Maybe it's even for the best, so at least he won't have to constantly get into trouble. From Fang Miao's face one could understand that she was a little upset by the current situation. Apparently she still had feelings. When the friends went outside, the girl with dark hair said that some people are really very strange. People like her, having lost something valuable, for some reason do not feel anything. In fact, it is quite difficult to explain in words. This is exactly how Fang Miao felt now. It was as if a huge black hole had formed in her heart, which could not be filled with anything. Qin Lan advises her friend to change her impulsive decision. She should not break off her engagement with such a good man. But in reality, all this was just a coincidence. In truth, the girl and Yi Tian had never really been in a relationship. To be honest, at that moment Fang Miao really hoped for a complete break in the relationship. Apparently she didn't like the hero at all. It turned out that their conversation was overheard by one of Ting's subordinates, and right now he is informing his boss that the brat is still alive. The rich man couldn't believe what he just heard. He had already ordered Lao Zhou to deal with this upstart as soon as possible. Suddenly, his second phone received a call from the guy with the tattoos. Apparently now he just wanted to talk about it. Tin was gladly ready to pick up the phone. He was very interested in listening to this idiot's excuses. Such important matters can no longer be trusted to weaklings. In the end, the rich man ordered his subordinate to come to him in person. He did not like to resolve such issues over the phone. Lao Zhou was on the spot within a few minutes. The security let him through. As it turned out, he needed to carefully look around. There were a lot of drunk girls lying on the floor. You could have stepped on one of them by pure chance. The guy with the tattoo was very worried. His whole face was covered with sweat. He asked his boss how he could help him. Tin wanted to know right now the reason why the brat was still alive, why his subordinate did not complete his task. Lao Zhou tried to play dumb and pretended that he didn't understand what he was talking about, but in fact he couldn't come up with a clear excuse. Because of this, Ting became furious. How dare he lie directly to the elder's face? He simply had to report everything in detail. The rich man perceived the living Yi Tian as a personal insult, so the student simply had to die, but the ward justifies himself by saying that this guy is a very strong fighter. His martial art is at a very high level. They failed to win even with a multiple advantage. All 20 gang members ended up in the hospital. Ting didn't want to listen to these excuses. He thinks that Lao Zhou is just a worthless weakling. If he doesn't stop behaving like this, then he will have to pick himself up piece by piece. But the guy with the tattoo, even after that, begged to be spared from such a task. The rich man had no choice but to find more experienced fighters. Because of this, Lao Zhou was very happy, but now he must get out of here immediately. Today he needs to look for a new job. Meanwhile, the comrades returned to their room. Today was just a great day, because they managed to earn a whole lot of money. The guys really wanted to count them. They were also surprised that the man paid them everything to the last penny. Apparently he was just scared. When they entered their home, they noticed an unusual picture. Right in the middle of the room there was a poster on which it was written that the hero should come to the sports ground at 9 in the evening. Yi Tian was amused by this. He was looking forward to meeting a new opponent. He liked to punish the scoundrels with his own hands. Soon evening came, and a huge crowd of people gathered on the site. All of them were waiting for the guy to appear right now. The main one was called Tian. One of his charges was lighting a cigarette. Some doubted that this schoolboy would dare to show up. It turned out that the man with the lighter was Van. now he looked like a little girl who was bullied in kindergarten. Be that as it may, he shouldn't think about it, they'll do everything for him anyway, even if he doesn't show up here, they'll find him. And if the gang had to waste their time searching for him, then it would be even worse for the hero, but Wang still continued to doubt. After all, Yi Tian is very strong. Tian just laughed when he heard this. Now he didn't recognize this man at all. Did this schoolboy really humiliate him so much that now Van is afraid of everything? It seemed to the leader that they had no chance of defeat. Besides, the hero did not appear, and yet he had his last puff left on his cigarette. He was clearly delayed. However, right at that moment the guy came. He looked quite confident and was the first to address the crowd of hooligans. It was immediately clear to him that they all came for his soul. Apparently today Yi Tian had a little work to do on re-education. Tian was happy when he saw his target. This brat really came here, now at least he won't have to run after him. But the hero, in turn, asked the gang if they were really looking forward to their trip to the depths of hell with such excitement. The chief smiled when he heard this. Such a performance was right in his style. Apparently this schoolboy is really quite good at something. To be honest, when he looked at this guy, he saw just a small and hypocritical mother's son. Yi Tian noticed that in fact he was not a son, but none other than the father of one of the members of their group. And right now the hero intends to take his stupid son back home. Van was meant all this time. Because of this, the man was at first frightened, but then became very angry, and obscenities and calls to immediately beat this upstart fell from his mouth. By the way, they are not a simple gang. As it turned out, these people were the best basketball team in the whole city. In truth, the guy had little interest in what these fools did in their free time. He simply calmed Van down with one deft blow, as usual. At the same time, he didn't even need to leave his place. The hero was still standing and waiting for at least one daredevil to finally approach him. Tian took this as a challenge. Now he and his brothers will properly kick this brat. Today he will find out where his place is. As it turned out, two girls were walking nearby. Chin Lan once again asked for forgiveness for her action and wanted to finally go home. Her friend replied that she wasn't really angry at all. She just wanted to walk a little more in the fresh air. It was a beautiful evening. Suddenly they noticed that there is some kind of fight going on the school playground. Loud screams and screams were coming from there. Fan Miao didn't really want to look at this, because what could be interesting in some children's squabbles? It's just nonsense. But at some point, the girlfriends notice that Yi Tian is there. How does he manage to create so many problems everywhere? Is he really fighting with the basketball team this time? Chin Lan wanted to call security, but her friend stopped her, because it wouldn't harm a person like this guy, just a small altercation. Tian had already carried out a dozen blows, but he had never been able to hit the target. He could not understand what was happening now. After all, this guy managed to dodge each of their blows, and besides, his face remained calm throughout the entire fight. At some point, the hero gets tired of doing nothing and, using his unique spiritual energy, sends several people flying with one blow. As a result of this, several hooligans scattered in different directions. Each of them was quite seriously injured. Some even started bleeding from the mouth. Only Van and the leader remained standing. The men became very scared, because they could not explain such physical strength. This guy is incredibly strong. He manages to kick people like they are rubber balls. There is no way they can handle him. Yi Tian, in turn, could not understand what was so amazing about his abilities. Right at that moment, a villain approached him from behind with a pipe in his hands. Suddenly a friend turned to him and loudly shouted that now he had an enemy with a weapon behind him. The hero needed to move away as quickly as possible. The guy heard these words, but did not listen to the girl's advice. He simply continued to stand absolutely motionless in the same place. To the great surprise of the attacker, Yi Tian remained completely unharmed. As a result of the blow, only the metal pipe was damaged. She was bent very badly. The bully couldn't believe his eyes. How was this possible? Had this schoolboy really surpassed human capabilities? In fact, the hero knew very well that someone was walking behind his back, and he, by the way, hated attacks from behind most of all. When the gang members saw the expression on this schoolboy's face, they were horrified. He clearly had access to some inexplicable power. They should get out of here as soon as possible. But to their great regret, Yi Tian was not going to let anyone go anywhere. He instantly moves to Wang and kicks him with all his might. Now they will stay here, because the full moon is a great time to deal with all your opponents once and for all. Qin Lan asked her friend if her ex-fiancé had any sadistic tendencies, because his behavior was very strange. Fang Miao believed that this person was quite capable of treating bad people like objects, and it would not be difficult for him to trample them. Qin Lan, despite all this, for some reason, considered the hero handsome. In this state he managed to look very cool and powerful. By the way, right now the fight seems to be continuing again, because after one blow from the guy it could very well end immediately. Tian advised the student not to become arrogant, because he still had not won yet. He would not be able to get away with it today. Yi Tian didn't even react in any way to what he heard, but simply kicked Wang in the stomach once again. He would never get tired of doing this. The leader recommended that he cool down a little, because a fight can be won not only by physical strength, sometimes you need to use your head. The man, meanwhile, was lying helplessly on the ground and asked someone to help him. Why were they all just standing and watching this abuse? Tian told the hero that although he is a skilled fighter, he is still a simple child, and children tend to be incredibly naive. At the moment, the guy put his spiritual energy into his legs and was about to hit the bully with all his might, and he, in turn, for some reason stood still. As it turned out, he had an ace up his sleeve. Right now one of his men was captured by Zhang, so the hero should stop. In the event that he even lays a finger on one of his subordinates, his dear comrade will have a very hard time. Yi Tian warned Tian that if even one hair fell from Zhang's head, he would have no reason to restrain himself. The bandits would definitely regret it. The leader really did not expect to meet such a skilled fighter as this student, because everywhere there were only worthless weaklings. The guy was absolutely not interested in listening to this chatter. Now he was only interested in his friend's location. Tian advised his opponent not to worry, because he would see him very soon, and the girls, meanwhile, could not understand why the fight had stopped. Qin Lan still wants to help the hero, but her friend assures that someone like him definitely won't need the help of two girls. He can stand up for himself. A few minutes later, another hooligan came to the scene. It seemed that he was the one who captured Zhang. This man behaved very arrogantly and with all his appearance wanted to show that it was not difficult for him to grab that guy and beat him. And this was apparently his dear comrade. Most likely today they need to eliminate him. He looks like an ordinary weakling. Yi Tian smiled when he saw this bastard and asked again if this idiot really grabbed Zhang. The bully with the bat confirmed his words with an arrogant look. It seemed to him that this student was not some kind of serious threat. Right now, the hero's comrade lies beaten and tied up among the trees in the back playground, not far from here. That was enough for the guy. After hearing what he heard, he just wanted to ask why this bully looked so happy. In response to this, the gang member laughed. Of course he feels great satisfaction, because he has just been given the opportunity to humiliate someone who is weaker. This weakling cried and cried all the time, and also constantly called for help from his dear comrade, so why didn't Yi Tian come to his aid? Zhang had a lot of fun with this bastard with a bat. The poor brat was really waiting for a hero and counting on salvation. Her friends also heard all this vile speech. Qin Lan really wanted to personally approach this freak and teach him a lesson. Now she had an incredibly strong desire to beat up this arrogant person, but Fang Miao restrained her and recommended not to interfere in the fight. The surprising thing was that Yi Tian was able to calmly listen to this entire monologue. He only asked if the bully had finished his story. But the gang member didn't quite understand the question. Even if he told everything he wanted, what this worthless weakling was going to do to him. In fact, the hero was already ready to deal with the offender of his comrade. Right now he recognizes all his rage. The guy filled his right hand with energy and grabbed the bully by the face. At that moment he really wanted to send the villain to the next world. Yi Tian pressed the gang member's body into the ground with all his strength. Let the fool consider this a temporary punishment while he is still alive. As a result of this attack, the bully's body was completely pressed into the ground. Tian couldn't believe his eyes. This student was clearly not human. The next moment the hero looked straight at him. It immediately became clear that the gang leader would be next. The situation was bad. The man found himself in an incredibly dangerous situation. If he didn't find a way to escape right now, he would feel very bad. Yi Tian walked close to his enemy and looked closely into his eyes. Was this bully really so scared that he was speechless? Perhaps he needs some help. Tian came to his senses a little and begged the guy not to approach him. It seemed to them that he was still capable of resisting, so he began to threaten. This all, of course, did not sound very convincing. The hero decides to ease his suffering a little. A funny idea popped into his head. The next moment, the student snapped his fingers. For some reason, because of this, all the clothes on the leader's body were torn to shreds. Now the man stood completely naked. Even the hat from his head had disappeared somewhere. It turned out that he had no hair at all under it. At this moment, the bully looked incredibly ridiculous. He found himself in the most humiliating situation of his entire life. He was literally shaking with anger. Yi Tian, in turn, laughed when he saw this. Now it became clear why he was so angry. Any person with such a hairstyle would hate everyone around him. Tian really couldn't do anything. He could only swear at the hero with all the words he knew. Unfortunately, the guy couldn't help him with this problem, because he's not a hairdresser, but he still could do something for him. For the purpose of re-education, the student hit the bully with all his might in the most important place. He will remember this lesson for a long time, there is no doubt about it. Now this fool was finished, but the guy still needed to find his comrade as soon as possible. Zhang needed help now anyway. Suddenly Yi Tian remembers that Wang was still nearby. This weakling stood still and could not say a word. He was shaking with fear. The hero invites his former roommate to experience everything that they did to his friend, to see if the bully wants to try his hand at stripping and tying him up. The man was so worried that he just started crying. He didn't even want to say anything. He just begged to let him go. But the guy stood and was silent. From his look it became clear that he did not want to let anyone go anywhere. Van could only choose whether to undress himself or let everything take its course. In the end, the bully decides to do as he was ordered. First he should take off his clothes, and also promise to get lost forever after today's fight. However, Yi Tian is still not fully convinced of the sincerity of his former neighbor's words. Besides, why is he so shy? They are almost family. At some point, the hero pretends that he is still ready to let Van go, because it seems that the man really realized all his mistakes. The hooligan had already managed to rejoice. Hope appeared in his soul that today he would be able to leave here alive and relatively healthy. In fact, everything turned out to be a little more complicated. Van will only be able to escape if he manages to survive after a fight with the entire basketball team. The athletes in school uniforms didn't quite understand what they were talking about, but Yi Tian quickly brought them to their senses. They heard everything correctly. If they don't beat the man, they themselves will greatly regret it. The gang members immediately began to carry out the order. The basketball players even showed enthusiasm, because no one wanted problems, and meanwhile the hero hurried to help his friend. Zhang was sitting tied up under a tree right now. His entire body was naked and it looked like he was badly beaten, and he was also guarded by two hooligans. They didn't even notice how Yi Tian was behind them. He asked the villains if they had a hand in why his comrade was now in this state. Only after this the bandits turned around and realized that there was a man behind them. Now the fools did not even suspect the danger they were in. Meanwhile, the hooligan who had been slammed into the ground still could not get out of the trap. He did not understand why the others were busy doing something else instead of helping him. But the basketball players had a very important task on which their lives depended. Right now they were beating the unfortunate Wang with the whole crowd. However, their accomplice screamed so loudly that his screams became impossible to ignore. Zhang's kidnapper ordered them to pull him out of the ground. As it turned out, the naked hooligan was their captain. Now he was too deep, it would be quite difficult to pull him out. The hero, in turn, was right now confronting two villains. One of them was preparing to make his attack. The man was going to finish everything off with one blow. But to his great surprise, when he punched the guy, nothing happened. Yi Tian simply looked into his eyes and asked how this weakling wanted to die. After this, the bully realized that he was very mistaken. He should not have acted so frivolously. Maybe they would still feel sorry for them and let them go. In fact, Yi Tian had already figured out what he wanted to do with him even before he met them, so they could not hope for mercy. The hero dealt with the villains in literally a minute. Now his comrade was finally freed. Now the friends were returning to the sports ground. The student at this time was thinking how these nonentities even dared to touch a person dear to him. They will definitely answer for this. Soon they were already in place. Van was lying on the ground and writhing in pain, and the rest of the gang were trying to somehow pull out their commander. The basketball players were scared when they saw Yi Tian. They couldn't even imagine that he would be able to come back so quickly. The bully ordered his immediate release, because he was already tired of hanging around here for such a long time. The hero replied that he didn't lock anyone in a cage, so he's not obligated to free some losers. This weakling is just lying on the ground, it won't be difficult for him to get out on his own. But in the end, Yi Tian agrees. The current generation does not have enough endurance and patience, but before that he had to make sure whether Zhang could stand on his feet. The comrade replied that he was completely fine. Now the student could not restrain himself and teach these scoundrels a lesson in any way he wanted. The hero even pretended to be ashamed of his action and apologized to the kidnapper of his friend. In this way he wanted to lull the enemy's vigilance. The next moment, Yi Tian slammed his fist onto the ground with all his strength, thus managing to free this loser in a matter of seconds. Then the guy continued to play the role and lied that he was very sorry, and in fact it was all just a misunderstanding between friends. The gang commander was a little stupid, so he believed everything he heard without hesitation. Now he wants to smoke more than anything else. Yi Tian happily volunteered to help with this matter. He just had a lighter in his hands. Would he be allowed to show one of his signature tricks? In truth, it was very simple. All you need to do is keep your eyes on the lighter, and in just a few seconds a miracle will happen. Immediately after this, Yi Tian used his unique power to control one of the elements. Suddenly a flame erupted in a very unexpected place. The bully was simply in shock. In surprise, his cigarette even fell out of his mouth. By some miracle, the fire spread to his private part. The rest of the gang were already very scared, and now they almost lost consciousness. Their opponent turned out to be a real monster. Right now their commander was rolling on the ground in different directions begging for help. His accomplices came to their senses a little and hurried to him. The trick was indeed a great success. Zhang praised his comrade for such resourcefulness. He had to think of such a thing. A few minutes later the fire was put out. Now the commander harbored a strong grudge. This is not the end. He will be able to return this humiliation tenfold. However, the guy did not attach much importance to these words. Such nonentities as this bully could only wag their tongues. By the way, now he changed his mind about letting them go. Van had been lying on the ground for several hours and just wanted to get out of here as quickly as possible, and this idiot again ran into trouble, who was pulling his tongue. Suddenly, all the gang members suddenly felt some kind of weight on themselves. It seemed that the hero had an incredible aura that allowed him to enslave people's minds. The basketball players could not resist this and all of them fell to their knees. At that moment their bodies simply stopped obeying. Apparently, thanks to Yi Tian's unique chaos energy, new opportunities were constantly opening up. Now no mortal could resist him. This could have ended today. Anyway, such weaklings no longer interested the guy at all. It was becoming too boring. The next morning, the school principal found out about everything that had happened, and somehow the fight on the playground was caught on video and appeared on the internet. As it turned out, this man was a former soldier. He had to work undercover for many years, but he had never seen such force. Rumors about this event quickly spread throughout the school. Students talked about this topic every now and then. Some girls decided that they should find new boyfriends. The hero, in turn, did not know that absolutely everyone around him now knew about yesterday's fight, so he was surprised why it was so noisy in the audience. As soon as he entered the classroom, everyone immediately paid attention to him, and from their looks one could understand that they were a little afraid. And one girl passing nearby simply stopped and opened her mouth. Her behavior greatly surprised Yi Tian, and in general, why did everyone suddenly fall silent? The guy didn't find an answer to his question and decided to simply not pay attention to it. You never know what's on the minds of mere mortals. It shouldn't interest him. Therefore, the student calmly went to his place, but at the same time he managed to feel the gaze of his classmates on him. Qin Lan was also in the audience now. She was surprised by the behavior of her friend. Now his changes were even more noticeable. By the way, now all the schoolgirls have suddenly begun to take a closer look at Yi Tian, because after what happened, it is clear to everyone around that he really is not some kind of weakling. The hero tried his best to behave normally, but it was too much. Everyone around was looking exclusively at him. What was the reason? He asked his classmates about this, but the girls only became very embarrassed in response. It was impossible to wait for an explanation from them. Also present in the class was Qiao. As soon as he noticed his sworn enemy, he immediately became incredibly furious. He still dreams about that day in the restaurant. Chin Lan asked her friend if he was preparing for today's test, because from his appearance it was clear that he was not scared at all. Yi Tian smiled widely when he heard such a question. She shouldn't worry about such trifles, this test will not cause him any problems. Meanwhile, a crowd of hooligans had gathered on the school grounds. They behaved very impudently, even allowing themselves to smoke cigarettes. One of them turned out to be Lao Zhou. It was he who gathered all the people here to properly teach the hero a lesson, but for some reason several mercenaries still have not come. At some point, this gang is noticed by a school security guard. He asks them what these freaks are doing on the territory of the educational institution. They should get out of here as soon as possible. A man with a mohawk heard him. This bully looked very arrogant. With all his appearance he wanted to show how tough he was. The villain came close to the worker and ordered him to repeat his words. How dare he interfere in the affairs of Sirius's gang? When the guard heard this, he was very scared, because this terrible and unbridled group is known to everyone around. They became popular because of their cruel behavior, but what did scoundrels like them need at school? The bully did not want to answer this question and ordered the employee to get out. The man decided not to try his luck and immediately left. It was clear from his face that he was very scared. This amused the villain a lot. After that, the bandit with a mohawk asked the boss to speed up, because his wife had been waiting for him for a long time. Why couldn't they just go and do their job? The other hooligans also agreed with him. As soon as the others arrive, they should immediately deal with this upstart. Within a few minutes, the gang burst into the school in full force. The villains ran into every classroom on their way and beat up anyone. None of the schoolchildren could resist. After all, these men turned out to be well trained. They would soon find their goal. Soon everyone who was in the next classroom heard loud sounds from the corridor. One would think that an earthquake had started behind the wall. Suddenly, two tall men burst into the classroom and asked the frightened teacher what class Yi Tian was in now. Within a few minutes, the hooligans entered the classroom where the guy was sitting, and he was ordered to immediately go out into the corridor. Looks like these idiots still can't tell the difference between good and bad, but there's too little space here. They should all come out onto the court. Lao Zhou agrees with this condition. After all, it is not in his principles to harm the innocent. The villains will be waiting for him on the street. The hero got up from the table and immediately followed them, but suddenly someone grabbed him by the hand. Apparently someone didn't want to let him go. It turned out to be a friend. She really wanted to help somehow, but didn't know how, so she decided to just ask about it directly. But Yi Tian assured her that there was no need to worry about him. He would return back soon. He only needed to teach a few re-education lessons. The man with the mohawk was surprised at the guy's fearlessness, and his boss said not to relax. Although there were many more of them, this enemy was strong. Suddenly they noticed that someone is approaching them, but it was not a hero. As it turned out, the school director personally decided to deal with them. One of the hooligans thought that one of the mercenaries they were waiting for had come to them, so he turned to him and asked why he was late. And Lao Zhou, in turn, joyfully greeted the man. Now they will definitely be able to easily deal with this annoying schoolboy. But to their great surprise, the director sharply grabbed the gang leader by the head. The bully could not understand for a long time what was happening now. The former soldier managed to lift Lao Zhou with his bare hands half a meter above the ground. Is he the same brat who dared to break into their school? Only after that the man said who he really was. At that moment the veins on his face even appeared from anger. Now the guy with blonde hair is in a very difficult situation. He needs help now. He asks his accomplice for this. But the former soldier didn't even think about letting them go. He would never be able to get away with it. Now no one could help him, even if he screamed with all his might. Immediately after these words, the man let go of the bully's head for a moment, and then hit him with all his strength with his knee right in the face. As a result of this attack, Lao Zhou lost consciousness and will definitely not be able to continue the fight, and the director, meanwhile, turned his attention to the second villain. With his entire appearance, the former soldier made it clear that this scoundrel would be next, and besides, he had too little time for idiots like them, so everything would happen quickly. Meanwhile, a man arrived on the school grounds who was late for his assignment. He couldn't find his group. He was told that everyone would be in front of the school. The guard was very scared when he realized that this was also one of the hooligans. today he had enough problems, so he did not want to stay here for a minute. However, the man was very unlucky. A guy with blue hair noticed him and asked if he was a security officer and if the employee had seen a group of people nearby. Right now, the director had already finished dealing with the two villains. The hero didn't even need to get his hands dirty today. When the man noticed the guy, he asked him. It was these two weaklings who were waiting for him. Yi Tian, in turn, did not quite understand what was happening. The former soldier explained to him that there was nothing to worry about. Now the student could calmly return to his classroom and finish the test. He took care of everything. The hero looked down and asked his enemy if he really managed to screw up so much that he lost even before he arrived. Because of this, Lao Zhou became very angry and advised the guy not to relax. The director overheard their conversation and realized that in fact there were much more troublemakers. Apparently now he will have to work more. The student confirmed these guesses and sat down directly on the scoundrel. He recommended that the man also wait a little. Soon all the hooligans should come here. The former soldier praised the guy for such courage. It's just in his spirit. If they act together, then everything will be even easier. Therefore, the director dragged the second villain closer and sat on his back, exactly the same as the hero. Now they only had to wait a little. The late hooligan could not find his accomplices. This school was incredibly huge. He had been wandering around its territory for dozens of minutes. At some point, the bully began to get angry. Why didn't these idiots just wait for him? Now because of this he has to waste his time for nothing. At some point, he is noticed by a teacher, whose class two brats had previously entered. The girl immediately realized that he was one of them and was worried. Besides, this man with blue hair wanted to ask her something, but the teacher didn't want to talk to him. She just wanted to run away. The bully, in turn, did not understand at all why such a reaction was happening. He tried to stop the girl, but he did not succeed. The teacher was so scared that she didn't even see the huge tree in front of her, so she hit her head with all her might into its trunk. The man with blue hair suggested that this reaction was most likely caused by his physical training, because recently he had just pumped up a little. These thoughts pleased his pride a little, but now there was no time for that. He needed to deal with the task as soon as possible and go to sleep. Yi Tian had been sitting on his rival for quite some time. At one point he asked why their accomplice was so late, and Lao Zhou recommended that he start worrying, because when the master finally appears, the hero will definitely pay very cruelly for everything. After some time, their accomplice finally found the right place. When he saw that the rest of the bandits were lying on the ground, he asked who dared to touch his brothers. Yi Tian stood up from the bully's back and turned to his friend. He finally deigned to appear. Now we can have a little fun. The man with blue hair laughed when he heard this, because he was confident in his abilities and was going to quickly sort things out here and go about his business. However, the hero recommends that he come to his senses a little. Very soon he will understand that in fact it was a huge mistake to come here at all. At some point, the villain realizes that this is the same guy who single-handedly dealt with the entire gang of basketball players. He also managed to watch the video on the internet. The bully's name was Master 2, now he was incredibly scared, and the guy came close to him and asked why his skin had become so pale. The director, of course, understood that this student was a skilled fighter, but he certainly did not expect that even the mercenaries would tremble with fear at the sight of him. The hero, meanwhile, could even afford to mock the bully. He stretched the skin on his face, which made the master look very ridiculous. Lao Zhou was indignant at what he saw. Why his accomplice was behaving this way. Is he one of the best fighters in this city? Yi Tian decides to explain everything properly, so that even such an idiot as this scoundrel understands everything, while the hero behaved very freely, and one could feel confidence in his speech. Immediately after this, the guy hit Lao Zhou in the stomach with all his might. He should remember well that no master they hoped for could help them. The man with the mohawk begged his accomplice to do at least something, but the villain just stood there and sweated. It was clear from his appearance that he was scared to death. But why does the master allow this self-confident schoolboy to insult their gang? How can one continue to call himself a man after this? Tin, meanwhile, stood on the roof of the school and looked through binoculars. He could not understand why this mercenary was standing still. What was going on there? At some point, the master comes to his senses. Apparently he finally pulled himself together and decided to defend the honor of their group. After all, he is one of the main members of Sirius's gang, and as long as he has the strength to stand on his feet, no one is allowed to insult their honor. Yi Tian understood which path his enemy chose. This is quite commendable, because usually all his opponents simply shook with fear and ran away. A man with blue hair confidently walked towards the hero. Tin decided that finally this man would complete the assigned task. Within a few seconds the master was standing close to the guy, but what was on his mind now? What technique was he going to use? What the hooligan did shocked his accomplices. What happened just now? Why is this idiot behaving this way? The master suddenly fell to his knees and asked Yi Tian for forgiveness. In fact, he was just passing by in search of the toilet, and he had never seen these villains before. The hero noticed that Lao Zhou and his accomplice called the man a master. Are they really trying to deceive him so stupidly now? And what about serious gang? In response to this, the bully began to deny everything. He is not a master at all, and generally does not consider himself worthy of talking to such a great man. The gang leader couldn't believe his eyes. How could anyone fall face down like that? Their boss would never let this nonentity live in peace. But the man with blue hair was not interested in this, because the risk of dying at the hands of a hero was much higher than at the hands of some rich schoolboy. Tin was still standing nearby and watching what was happening. He couldn't believe that such an experienced fighter could behave like that. One of his assistants tried to calm the gentleman, because his doctor recommended being less angry. Such behavior is bad for health. But Tin simply ordered to get out of his sight. The ward should call his uncle right now and report that their plan had failed miserably. At some point, Yi Tian got tired of these humiliations and allowed the master to get to his feet. In fact, it's already sickening to watch. After this, the hero simply goes about his business, only asking to tell the boss Lao Zhou that this is not the end. They will all pay their bills. Meanwhile, in an expensive mansion, a certain Mrs. Hong was given the data that the woman asked about a few days ago. She thanked her assistant and let her leave work early. She just wanted to study all the information on her own. Finally, the secretary said that Su Mushin called their office a few minutes ago. Hong was surprised at this. Why this girl suddenly remembered her. As it turned out, the data concerned Yi Tian. It contained a brief description of his character traits, as well as a medical history and much more. When the woman read all this, she was very surprised. Wasn't this guy just an ordinary weakling? Apparently Su Mushin managed to find a real treasure. At some point, the lady felt the presence of a man next to her, so she ordered the stranger to immediately come out of his disguise. It turned out to be an unknown man in a black robe. He praised Hong, because since their last meeting her skills had improved greatly. She even managed to detect him. The woman even knelt before the mysterious man. Apparently she had already met him before, so what made him come here in person? As it turned out, the man wanted Hong to go to the hero and figure out this situation, because all the groups in that area were suppressed. Details need to be found. The lady immediately agreed to this task. She really wanted to know more about Yi Tian. After all, his behavior had changed a lot in a very short time. Now 2 students were sitting in the classroom and diligently preparing for exams. One of them was upset, because most likely they missed another fight today. Fan Miao asked her friend if she was really so interested in the hero, since he is usually the one who takes part in fights. Suddenly, Qing Lan grabbed her classmate's hand and asked for one favor, whether she would allow her to date Yi Tian. The girl with dark hair didn't even understand why her permission was being asked, but her friend should get to know this person better before starting a relationship. In response to this, the girl with blonde hair assured that she had already decided everything a long time ago. She really liked this guy and she was ready to start dating him right now. Suddenly, Fang Miao felt that same feeling of incredible emptiness inside herself, which made her feel very sad. She decides that she has enough work for today and wants to go to the restroom. Her friend is going to go with her. They always act like sisters. Right now, in one of the corridors there was a student named Tai Min. He was very popular because of his gang of karatekas. All the schoolgirls considered him handsome and sweet. It seemed to them that he seemed to have stepped off the screens of their favorite television series. He was a rather tall guy with blonde hair, and there was always security next to him in the form of 2 fighters. Although many girls ran after him, this student was always interested in only one. He had loved Qin Lan since elementary school. By chance, he was lucky to meet his beloved near the restroom, but will the beauty reciprocate his feelings? The guy approached her very brazenly and suggested that they go somewhere to have fun together today, but the girl asked her to leave him alone. Taemin is already used to hearing refusals from his beloved, this time he is tired of it and he is determined to get what he wants. At one point, this bastard literally orders Chin Lan to go to a restaurant with him right now, because he can give her everything she gets. Fang Miao rushed to help her friend. This idiot can't get even an inch closer to her, he's taking on too much. The student asked his chosen one why this schoolgirl always goes with her. It seems that for some reason he didn't like it. A girl with dark hair asks her friend to run to the restroom, and she will stay here and detain this pervert, because she can do it. But Tai Ming is not going to let anyone go. Is the beauty still able to restrain herself at the sight of him? This fool behaved truly disgustingly. Fang Miao orders to immediately unhook from them and never approach them again, even at a distance of hundreds of meters. The guy, in turn, recommends that this girl think carefully about her words, because you shouldn't forget about his strength. Does she really think that she can install him? The beauty was worried at that moment, because this student is really different from others, his strength is very impressive, and what if he really decides to attack? When Qing Lan heard the threats, she immediately intervened. If even one hair fell from her friend's head, Yi Tian would never let this scoundrel out alive. Tai Ming couldn't understand why his chosen one suddenly started talking about this guy, because everyone at school knew that he was Fang Miao's fiancé. In response to this, the beauty said that, by the way, the hero is now her boyfriend. They even kissed once in a restaurant. This could be confirmed by everyone around. When the student heard this, he became incredibly angry, even his eyes changed their color to red. Is this really true? One of his guards confirmed the girl's words, although he did not know all the details, but the kiss between these two definitely took place. When Tai Ming heard this, he became even more angry. How could this damn weakling dare to seduce his chosen one? Is one bride really not enough for him? Immediately after this, he orders one of his subordinates to immediately find Yi Tian, but the guard tries to dissuade the boss from this idea. However, the student remained adamant, although he was aware of the hero's unique abilities, but his pride did not allow him to simply abandon his beloved girl. During the big break, one of Yi Tian's classmates asked him if he had time to complete his test, because he had little time. As it turned out, the guy was sure that he passed with the highest score. Suddenly his friend called the hero to him, because at the main school forum everyone was right now discussing his relationships with girls. Yi Tian came closer and was convinced of this. Everyone on the site was really arguing about who his real bride was. Zhang even began to envy his friend a little when he only managed to seduce the second beauty. He probably has real talent. But the hero only now found out that he has two girls. These stupid mortals love to make up all sorts of nonsense. Right now, Tai Min, along with his guards, was heading out to search for the guy. He wanted to immediately put him in his place and win the heart of his chosen one. He simply must end all this today. Wasn't this idiot taught to share? How one beauty may not be enough. The sharp guy opened the doors to the audience and challenged Yi Tian to a duel in a loud voice. Apparently rage had completely clouded his mind. The hero became interested in this eccentric and immediately came closer to him. Did he really want to measure his strength? As soon as Tai Min saw his target, he immediately rushed to the guy. This insatiable brat will get a lot from him today. His guard asked him to think again before acting. After all, this student is just a monster who beats people like punching bags. But Tai Min could no longer step back, because he had been pursuing his beloved for several years. She was his dream. These fools can't even imagine what it's like to feel that your love is not reciprocated. At that moment memories appeared in the guy's head. About a month ago, he once again invited Qin Lan to meet, but she again refused. Perhaps it seemed to her that everything was happening too quickly. But most likely the reason was different. For some reason this fool chose the most inopportune moment for his proposal. After all, right now the girl was busy with something else, giving a bouquet of flowers near the toilet. This is probably the stupidest idea you can imagine. But Tai Min still took it very to heart. Today he was wounded right in the soul. Apparently love requires colossal endurance from you. A few minutes later, the student left the restroom in the hope that this eccentric had finally left her behind, even if he wasn't here. But to her great regret, this pervert was waiting for her near the door all this time. In his hands was a huge ring with a diamond. But Qin Lan was not at all interested in this. She hit him in the face with her palm with all her might. Because of this the guy even had a huge mark all over his cheek. Did he really still have hope? even after the beauty spent so much time deliberately sitting in the restroom waiting for him to leave? Taiming even took a 3-day online course and training to learn how to seduce a beauty queen, so why isn't he succeeding? After that, for some reason the student turned on his laptop and tried to prove that this was all true. Yi Tian actually didn't even know that such lessons existed. The hero was very amused by this. This guy was really very funny. Did he really have the intelligence to sign up for such courses? Taimin, in turn, did not understand what was wrong with this. He was more interested in the question of why he still couldn't do anything with girls. Any normal person could answer this question. Most likely the fact is that he behaves like some kind of abnormal stalker. Suddenly Qin Lan ran into their class. She asked her friend if everything was okay with him, if this fool had caused him any problems. In fact, the guy turned out to be quite harmless. Apparently he just really wants to find a person who will really love him. Yi Tian decided to show by his own example how to behave with the one you really love with all your heart. The hero smoothly approached the beauty and raised his hand to her face. Was he really going to kiss her right on the lips? Because of this, the girl was very embarrassed about what was on his mind. There were a bunch of their classmates around. It was all too frank. But the guy recommends that his girlfriend simply not pay attention to it. Now they only have mutual love. At some point, Qin Lan can't stand it and runs away from the class. Most likely, the hero wanted to demonstrate his ability to embarrass the opposite sex. Zhang was surprised at his comrade's abilities. This could truly be called visual learning. The whole secret was that you should never copy the behavior of others. If you behave naturally, you will never be rejected. Suddenly, a schoolboy ran in and said that a certain young gentleman had urgent business with Yi Tian, and he was ready to lead everyone to the right place. It turned out to be a large exhibition of gambling stones. It turned out that Zhang was very interested in this kind of thing. You couldn't tell from his appearance that he liked it. The hero was also a little surprised. Was his friend really attracted to gambling? You couldn't tell from the situation with the buns in the restaurant. At some point, the guy stopped abruptly and picked up a small blue book. The seller noticed that the dear guest seemed to be a real expert. As it turned out, it was the original of a very good textbook, but Yi Tian did not believe the merchant, how such a rare thing could end up in such a place. But the man insisted on the veracity of his words, and besides, this book is very inexpensive. It can become the property of the guy for only 12,000. Zhang was very angry once listening. Does this bald fool really expect to deceive them? Such a fake costs me more than 20. The merchant was a little scared. In fact, he was not lying about the authenticity of his goods, but he was ready to give up almost the full price. An unusual aura emanated from this book. If the hero buys it now, he will quite possibly get a unique thing at his disposal. However, as soon as the friends moved away from the display case, the energy emanating from the paper suddenly disappeared somewhere. Was it really so little? Suddenly the guy thought about how much aura was contained in the jade that was extracted from his gardens in his home world. He had never been able to see it in his life. At some point, an elderly man approached them with his granddaughter. He turned to the young man with a book in his hands. The hero had no idea what kind of people they were and saw them for the first time. He became interested in how he could help the old man. Suddenly, a comrade appeared from behind him and greeted Grandfather Shui. Zhang must be very familiar with this elderly man. As it turned out, the old man was interested in the book in Yi Tian's hands. He was just walking nearby and noticed this antique, whether the student would like to give this thing to him. The guy was not against such a deal, but he did not want to give away his property for free. He had an offer according to which the master could buy what he wanted. His friend did not fully understand why the hero was doing this, because they had just bought this defective trinket for only 20, why these manipulations? However, Yi Tian did not stop there, but continued to increase the price of this antique, because, as it turned out, he was not going to sell it right now. Everyone around him began to explain to him that, by the way, this grandfather is a very authoritative person and it is better not to provoke him. Why not just give him this book? But is the guy obligated to do this? Is he now supposed to give his property to every passerby? This is also simply ridiculous. Suddenly a girl with green hair suddenly ran towards him. It seemed she was very angry with the hero, which he allowed himself to do. Why is this nonentity behaving this way? After all, her grandfather was their most famous doctor in the city, who saved hundreds of lives. No one dares to contradict him. When Yi Tian heard this, he was very interested in one thing, how the best doctor in the area could not see his own illnesses. The old man immediately asked his granddaughter to stop. Such behavior was very uncivilized. He simply could not find this book for a long time. He is ready to buy it for 5 million. Even the hero was shocked when he heard such a sum. Is this book really so valuable? But what is so special about it? While Zhang was happy for his comrade, the guy simply threw the thing right towards the girl. Since it was so important for the old man, then let them take it. As payment, they just have to stop bothering him. This situation is a little annoying. Mere mortals are sometimes very arrogant. And now Yi Tian wants to go to the place where the masters demonstrate stone carving. His friend promised to tell him more about it. Zhang couldn't believe that his brother just gave up a huge amount of money, but for the hero it didn't matter. In fact, he could get whatever he wanted. The elderly man's granddaughter's name was Jianhu. Apparently the guy's behavior made her very angry. Next time she will definitely punish him. When Yi Tian looked at a variety of stones from all over the world, he noticed that there were definitely jades similar to those in his world, but they were quite difficult to find. His friend could not forget that situation with the book. Maybe they should still return to the old doctor, but the hero asks him to forget about it. Right now he has more important things to do. He picked up a stone and easily broke it in half. This piece is definitely not suitable. Zhang explained that the minerals Yi Tian was interested in were actually incredibly rare, and the chance that they would be able to find them here was very small. Suddenly a girl approached them from behind. As it turned out, it was the sister of one of the guys. She looked quite pretty. Zhang introduced his best friend to his relative, but she responded by ordering the hero to stay away from her brother. The two did not get along from the very beginning. Yi Tian's friend began to make excuses for his sister, but there was no need for this, because a hero would never offend a person like this girl. The sister, in turn, was very skeptical about Yi Tian. He seemed very strange and suspicious to her. Her relative was always friends with some scoundrels. After some time, it became clear that there really were incredibly small reserves of spiritual energy left in this world. The guys never managed to find anything worthwhile. Suddenly a girl approached them again and said that the hero was very lucky. He found a good stone, because the chance that it contained jade was high. Does this beauty really also understand stones? Zhang advised his friend to listen to her, because my sister has been practicing in this field for a long time. Yi Tian invites her to play a game. He will bet that there is nothing in this mineral. If he wins, he will receive a kiss. If he loses, he will never get close to her brother again. The girl was surprised how arrogant this brat was. She happily agreed to such a bet. Now she had a huge chance of winning. But in fact, little sister didn't even have a chance, because the hero had previously absorbed the essence from this stone, and now there wasn't even a drop of energy left in him. Yi Tian asked the seller to split this thing. As it turned out, this mineral was recently delivered from a unique place. It definitely has an aura. The girl noticed that her opponent behaves like a child who wants the impossible, so where does he get such confidence from? At some point, these two came close to each other. Most likely the hero simply does not know how to lose and always gets what he wants. The beauty warns that if his hands come even a centimeter closer to her, he will greatly regret it. However, this did not stop the guy. He only wanted to see this girl angry even more. Was she really capable of showing something interesting? After this, the sister can't stand it and breaks away from Yi Tian's hands. Now it has finally become clear to her that her brother is hanging out with an absolutely irresponsible idiot. The hero was even offended by such words. No one had allowed himself to address him like that before, and today they even called him such a bad word. In fact, the guy even liked it. He loves it when a girl has character and is able to stand up for herself. In the end, it all turned out to be just a joke. Yi Tian wanted to see the beauty's reaction. Now it was clear what kind of person she was. Meanwhile, the seller had already finished his work. Right now the man was carrying a magic stone split in half in his hands. The sister could not believe her eyes. There was not even a drop of spiritual energy in this mineral. The likelihood of this was extremely low. The hero hopes that the beauty will admit defeat, because they still made a fair deal, but will she want to fulfill such conditions? The girl is ready to accept defeat, but she still could not understand why this happened, but she is not against the kiss. Suddenly their conversation is interrupted by a stool that came out of nowhere. It flew straight towards them. the one who threw it clearly did not want them to touch their lips. Fortunately, Yi Tian managed to grab his friend's hand, only thanks to this they remained unharmed. Wasn't this scoundrel taught that attacking on the sly is ugly? The attacker turned out to be some student. He was going to take over their family with the help of his sister. Sooner or later she would definitely become his wife. Did this fool really come up with such a ridiculous plan in his head? It sounds really threatening, but why did he decide that this girl belongs to him? The bully thought that this was very reckless, because no one dares talk to him in such a tone. By the way, he practices martial arts. Some passers-by began to whisper among themselves. This guy's name was Fong. Everyone around him considered him a real martial artist. Mr. is a real professional. The beauty assured her friend that all this was complete nonsense, because they did not even enter into a marriage contract, but their gang and her family were connected. She also recommended that the hero simply ask for forgiveness, but the student refused such an offer. In fact, there is no such word in his vocabulary. The girl didn't understand how you could be so crazy. You still need to be able to retreat in time when the advantage is not on your side. But Yi Tian could no longer be convinced. If the young master wanted a fight so much, then he would be able to demonstrate everything he was capable of. Fong decided that his enemy was apparently in a great hurry to go to the next world. This was very short-sighted on his part. Zhang advised his friend to be careful, because this man is a real fighter. The fight began with a sweeping kick. The hero easily managed to dodge it. If this self-confident fool wants a fight, then so be it. Yi Tian immediately hit his opponent in the chest with his elbow with all his strength. The attack turned out to be incredibly strong. Most likely the self-confident master would not be able to continue. As expected, an arrogant spoiled brat who doesn't know how to lose was this vaunted young professional. In fact, Fong was still standing on his feet and was even going to continue the fight. He chose the previously thrown stool as a weapon. The young master called himself a genius. He was lucky to be born this way, because he had incredible learning abilities. He was able to learn any technique. To do this, it was enough for him to see a certain technique only once, after which it would not be difficult to perfectly repeat it on his own. Well, for some reason, he did not copy Yi Tian's technique, but simply rushed at him with a stool in his hands. To his great regret, such nonsense would not work. At the same time, Fong could not understand where he made a mistake, because he managed to predict all the movements of his enemy, but the hero asked him not to bother himself with these stories. The young master couldn't believe his eyes, because all his life he believed that it doesn't matter how strong you are, the only thing that matters is how you learn. The guy perceived all this as children's fairy tales. This world is full of remote fighters, but only a few have enough discipline to become truly great. Fong continued to stand his ground. He considered himself a true talent, so he was destined to win in every confrontation. After all, this weakling could scratch his tongue much better than he could fight. All his movements were incredibly slow and predictable. Therefore, it was not difficult for the hero to easily dodge his attack and immediately after that hit back with his fist with all his strength. It was hard to believe, but even after this the young master continued to believe in his victory. He tried to understand why he could not hit at least once. Was this really all that our young genius is capable of? He still needs to work a lot on his fighting abilities. This is no good. Fong could not come to terms with his defeat, but the best solution for him was to simply give up, because someone like him would never reach Yi Tian. At some point, the young master became so angry that he lost his temper. It was a personal moment to end him once and for all. This arrogant guy should remember that his power and status do not give him the right to control other people's lives, and besides, he cannot even win. The hero grabbed his opponent by the head and threw him on the concrete floor. From the moment of his resurrection, he decided that he would never again feel sorry for bad people. Fong eventually realized that there was no way he could surpass his opponent in martial arts, but is this really the only way to resolve any dispute? The young talent invites the guy to compete on the stones. The one who manages to find the stone with the most spiritual energy wins. The young master tried to provoke the hero and said that he agreed to such a confrontation only if there was also money at stake, but a beggar like Yi Tian was unlikely to be able to do this. After all, someone like him definitely has empty pockets, and Fong, by the way, besides incredible talent, also has a lot of money and an excellent reputation. Zhang wanted to help his friend and was ready to give away all the money he managed to win after that argument with the buns in the restaurant. But the talented master ordered him not to interfere, otherwise his whole family would have a hard time. He doesn't want that, right? Fang tried his best to look intimidating and warned for the last time that everyone who dared to support his opponent would meet their death at that very moment. Several of his assistants realized that their main one seemed to be a little crazy. The best solution would be to bring him back to his senses a little. Yi Tian could not bring up one thing: why all the rich sons always like to look for problems on their own heads. After all, you have to be a truly narrow-minded person to behave so arrogantly, without even studying your enemy. At this point, the girl asked her brother who his friend really was. In truth, it didn't really matter, because Zhang truly believed in him. And even if the hero doesn't have money or fame, this guy will still do his best to support him, so he doesn't feel sorry for any money. But Yi Tian said that this was not necessary, because in any case he would be able to surpass this upstart in this rivalry. From now on, this battle was their private matter, and no one except the two of them should get involved in this dispute. As it turned out, this time the hero had a suitable technique. Thanks to his unique abilities, he was able to invest a large amount of aura even into the most ordinary stone. Fang calmed down a little and was ready to start the competition. Now they will both choose one stone. The loser will completely lose his money. Zhang asks his comrade to think again before starting. After all, this young master is quite good at such things. However, Yi Tian had already decided everything and even chose his stone. In fact, he simply poured energy from his body directly into the mineral. At the same time, the stone looked rather inconspicuous. Everyone thought that this guy had absolutely no understanding of this matter. He would definitely lose. Fang also chose his stone. It was funny for him to see his opponent's choice, because these two minerals don't even need to be split. Everything is already obvious. But the guy advises the young talent not to be so confident, because only the one who laughs last laughs well. The worker split the first stone. The energy it contained was estimated at 200 to 300 units. In fact, the result was not bad. It was mineral Fang. The arrogant student was already celebrating his victory. He also boasted that his family received 50% of all the jade mines in the country. In turn, the hero behaved absolutely calmly. His opponent did not need to rejoice ahead of time. Didn't his parents tell him that? The worker could not believe her eyes. How was this even possible? This stone looked like ordinary waste, but at the same time it contained excellent jade. Those present were also surprised at what had happened. Could it be that the young master really managed to lose even in this dispute? Fang was very angry because of the long announcement of the results. How long should he wait for his applause? By the way, he has a lot of other things to do. But when he saw what kind of essence was inside the Yi Tian mineral, he froze in amazement for a few seconds. And after that he immediately attacked the innocent worker. It seemed to him that she had set it all up, because it was simply impossible to believe in such a coincidence of circumstances. However, this did not really matter. Now the young master could see the emperor-level jade with his own eyes. He would not win this competition. After all, even if Fang breaks absolutely all the stones that are here in half, he will never be able to find material even close to this level. People standing around were shocked by the quality of this mineral. Seeing such a thing live was real luck. The sister asked her brother to pinch her to make sure that what was happening was real. Did they really have a chance to see the imperial jade? However, the young master was not going to give up. He ordered all the stones available here to be brought to him. It is very difficult for him to admit defeat. One of the workers asked the young gentleman to calm down, because finding material of this level would not be possible in any case, but Fang did not want to listen to this. After some time, a huge pile of stones lay on the table, but as expected, there was nothing of the kind inside them. Fang should just accept her defeat. Does she still have any hope of winning? His actions are simply worthless. Yi Tian decides to give the precious jade to his friend, because today he is in a good mood and wants to share it with others. The girl was incredibly happy about such a gift, because such a thing is very difficult to find. Today she is having a great day. Even the young gentleman was surprised by such generosity, how this eccentric could simply give her his mineral, for which you can get a whole fortune. In fact, this did not matter much to the hero, because he promised his girlfriend that he would definitely defeat this scoundrel in an argument on any terms. In the end, the workers cut all the stones. they managed to find a lot of high-quality jade, but none of them were imperial. Fang finally understood the situation he was in, but instead of accepting defeat, he ordered everyone to stand still. Now everyone who saw this confrontation should keep their mouths shut for the rest of their days. Apparently this rich kid decided that everything was allowed to him. People were perplexed. Did he really think that only thanks to an authoritative family he could do this? They didn't even do anything wrong. However, Fang did not want to listen to these stupid people. He ordered everyone to shut up and just carry out all his instructions. And he had something special prepared for Yi Tian. The best fighter in the city would arrive here right now, and he would be able to put the upstart in his place. The hero was not at all afraid of such threats, but calmly took a chair and sat down. He was already impatient to look at the next fighter whom he could easily defeat. At the same time, everyone around him considered this guy crazy, because Master 2 was considered the best fighter in Sirius's gang. Such behavior was suicide. The beauty recommended that Yi Tian just give this stupid child the Imperial Jade, because life is much more important than such trifles. However, the hero has already decided everything. His friends just need to relax and completely put the current situation under his control. Zhang noticed that his comrade was behaving exactly the same as the time he was prevented from eating 100 buns. Was he really going to defeat Master 2? Fang believed that such behavior was just window dressing. His opponent needed to stop pretending to be a knight. He was probably scared to death. In response to this, the hero simply smiled. Since childhood he has tended to adhere to his moral principles. One of them is to always fight back. Soon the best fighter of the gang arrived at the scene. He was also accompanied by numerous accomplices. Yi Tian immediately warned them that they could only save their lives if they did not attack first. The man did not immediately understand who his target was, so he ordered the student to get up from his chair now. Now they will punish him properly. It was hard to believe, but this master turned out to be the same fighter whom the hero humiliated on the school grounds a few days ago. The man stood behind him and couldn't believe his eyes. Please let it be some other student. Is this really possible? But to his great regret it turned out to be Yi Tian. The bandit couldn't believe his eyes. He was probably the unluckiest person on the entire planet, because such coincidences rarely happen even in fairy tales. At this moment, a bunch of thoughts were mixed up in his head. Why is all this for him? If he manages to leave here today while living, he will definitely run away to retire. And Fang, with a joyful face, turned to the master and asked to eliminate this upstart as quickly as possible, since it wouldn't be difficult for him to pull this off. However, the man already knew how it would all end, so he decided not to waste time. His weapon immediately fell to the floor, and he himself approached the hero and sharply fell to his knees. Now the villain needs to once again come up with some incredibly stupid story to justify himself. But this time the guy was not going to act so generously, because this man was once again acting incredibly arrogant. The girl was very surprised to see what kind of person this Yi Tian was, that even the best fighter from Sirius gang fell to his knees in front of him. Only now did she understand why her brother behaved this way around the hero. After all, there were really good reasons for this. The young master could not understand what the best fighter he knows was doing now, since he was ordered to immediately deal with this beggar. However, the master recommended that Fang keep quiet. If she angers this guy too much now, then no one will leave here safe and sound. After this, the young talent apparently went completely crazy, because he decided to deal with the hero on his own. Now for this he called the rest of the gang members. Yi Tian turned to the man and asked him to explain what this schoolboy meant now. Was he really threatening him with violence? The master had no other choice but to order his subordinates to grab the young master and shut his mouth. If he insulted the hero again, there would be no turning back. The bandits immediately began to carry out the order, because they had already heard many stories about this guy. No one wanted to risk their lives. Yi Tian reminded the master that he always returns everything to people tenfold, which meant that they would not just leave here. After all, Fang was just ready to take the life of another person, which means he needs to be taught a lesson, but the guy is much kinder than him. Therefore, there is no need to kill anyone. The man is obliged to break the young master's hand right now, and in case of refusal, he himself perfectly understands the consequences. The hero looked at the bandit and asked if he needed to repeat his order again. The man at that moment did not know what to do. But in the end there was nowhere to go. If he refused now, the situation would only get worse. Fong couldn't believe what was happening now, what this man was going to do. Was he really not at all afraid of his connections? The master made it clear to the young master that in fact, not everything in this world can be bought, and not everything is decided by ordinary influence. After all, sometimes you can meet people with whom you should never get involved, otherwise there is a high risk of losing your own life. But just as the bandit was fully concentrating on his assignment, the hero suddenly told him to stop. As it turned out, he was just joking. In fact, there was no need to punish an ordinary fool so cruelly. Today the guy is incredibly kind. At this moment, his enemies could finally breathe a sigh of relief. They were incredibly lucky, they could go home alive. However, the rich brat still needs to be punished somehow, otherwise he will continue to behave badly towards other people. Yi Tian decided to do something rather creative. As punishment, he boiled a kettle and poured hot water directly into Feng's pants. At that moment, the guy felt the most severe pain of his life. Because of this he had to beg one of the bandits to at least somehow help. However, to his great regret, the man could not do anything, because there was no doctor nearby. Apparently he just needed to endure it. The hero was pleased with this picture, but now this was the last warning. If these non-entities approach him again, they will definitely lose their lives. After that, they all leave together. The girl thought that they should be punished a little more severely, but decided to simply remain silent. The guy suspected that his friends were thinking about this now, but now these hooligans would never stand in their way. Further events take us a few days ahead. Now the friends were talking about how nothing interesting has been happening at school lately. Fan Miao recommends that her friend not get hung up on such nonsense, but rather spend more time studying, but the girl replied that such a beauty like her does not need to study at all. After all, there was always the opportunity to seduce some smart classmate. Not a single student could resist her face. At some point, a girl with dark hair slapped her friend on the back of the head with all her might. She needed to stop making a fool of herself. After that, they asked the guy for forgiveness and quickly leave, while the girl with blonde hair was very happy, because she could seduce her classmate with one look. Yi Tian came to school right now. Today the weather was great and sunny. This can be used for productive cultivation. Suddenly a red car drives up to him. It turned out to be Ms. Hong. It's time to meet this guy and see what he's really like. The hero tried not to pay attention to the expensive car, because right now he was in a state of cultivation. If it was interrupted, it would be bad. However, events did not turn out at all the way he wanted, because the driver of the car stopped right next to him and addressed him. Has Yi Tian really become so popular that even beauties in expensive cars are now chasing him? It all sounded too optimistic. The pretty woman was visible from the school grounds, so a few guys thought maybe they had a chance, but it's pretty hard to damage something like that. The lady stood near her car and waited for the hero to approach her. One of the schoolchildren even decided to take a photo of her. But as soon as Yi Tian took a few steps, the woman swung her leg and tried to hit him with all her might, while she had a red rose tattoo on her leg. It turned out that Hong had simply superhuman strength. With one swing of her leg, the floor under her shattered into small pieces, and a huge hole formed at the point of impact. All this only said that this woman was the owner of one of the 12 flowers, but why did she need to attack unexpectedly? The lady, in turn, was surprised that the guy managed to evade her unexpected attack so easily. This student has sharp instincts. After that, Hong struck again, but this time with her left hand, which Yi Tian also managed to easily dodge. He suddenly wondered if he teased this woman a little, whether he would be able to speed up his cultivation process. The lady, in turn, became more and more interested in this guy every minute. He would definitely be able to show her many more good techniques. After this, their fight continued for some time. It seems that the hero was finally lucky to meet an opponent who could fight him on equal terms. Hong could not believe what was happening now, because Yi Tian was able to easily take 8 of her strongest attacks and remain without a single scratch. She couldn't help but ask the hero who he was and where he came from in this world, but Yi Tian only continued to play with his rival. Because of this, the lady was very angry. Now she was using her spiritual energy to levitate in the air and lift huge stones with her. Well, why complicate everything so much? As it turned out, the woman also had incredible speed. She managed to disappear from the place where she was in the blink of an eye. In addition, she managed to appear in the same way right in front of her opponent. only a truly brilliant fighter can react to such attacks. Qin Lan and her friend were nearby, and because of the incredible fight, a huge wind arose. It looked like a real hurricane. Fan Miao felt like she was in some kind of movie, because what was happening could not be explained by the simple laws of the universe. At some point, Yi Tian gets tired of this performance, so he takes advantage of the moment and grabs his rival's leg. In fact, such attacks are absolutely useless against him. If the woman continues in the same vein, it will end badly for her. Hong couldn't believe what was happening. This student had now managed to block one of her most powerful attacks. It was impossible for an ordinary person to do this. However, the hero could not understand what surprised the lady so much. With his strength, it would not be difficult for him to finish this fight in a few seconds. Meanwhile, the friends ran closer and asked the woman to stop, because their friend could die from such blows. However, the lady was not going to listen to them. She was too interested in fighting with the hero, because his strength turned out to be simply incredible. After another attack, Yi Tian grabbed his opponent's hand and managed to move even faster. After that, the guy used a small part of his spiritual chaos energy and threw Hong aside. Right now she was flying into a concrete wall. The woman flew at such a speed that a huge imprint was left on her body. Did Yi Tian's power really have unlimited potential? Fang Miao knew the lady. The girl didn't want her to get hurt, so she hurried to help her. Now Hong was finally convinced that her strength was not enough to withstand such an opponent. It didn't fit in her head. After all, the hero could have easily broken her arm, but he didn't do it. Was he really just playing with her all this time? A girl with dark hair immediately ran up to her and asked if she was okay, and if it was too dangerous to use such strong blows against schoolchildren. But the lady replied that this guy was far from an ordinary person. With such blows it was impossible to harm him in any way. Did this stupid girl still think that her friend was an ordinary high school student? She should gain life experience as soon as possible. In fact, Yi Tian was deceiving everyone around him. He definitely has some special cultivation method that gives him unique abilities. Qin Lan soon also ran to them. She was very impressed by the fight. These two looked simply incredibly powerful. The hero asked the lady if she was already exhausted. Perhaps they should take a break so that the woman could work on her physical capabilities. Because of this, Hong became very angry and lost her temper. No one dares to blame her for lack of stamina. She didn't have a chance to win. The guy once again grabbed her leg right in the middle of the lunge. Resistance was simply useless. Only thanks to her unique skill and vast experience does the woman manage to get out of the grip. Now she is doing the splits. Yi Tian really liked these movements. Such skill was extremely rare. The lady is truly a very skilled fighter. In the end, the hero gets tired of this fight. He rushes to school, but finally says goodbye to Hong and calls her the unfamiliar name Rowley. This was the first time the lady had heard someone call her that, but for some reason the name seemed incredibly familiar to her. At some point, the lady became very dizzy. It felt as if she had forgotten something very important. Fang Miao asked the woman who Rowley was, but Hong still couldn't figure out her thoughts. She had no idea what it meant. Now the guy has met the second owner of the flower artifact. This is definitely not a mere coincidence, but what should he do next? Meanwhile, the girls went to the nearest restaurant. The lady needed to rest a little and regain her strength. The woman turned to the dark-haired girl and suggested that Yi Tian and she were actually from the same world. And even their fake engagement was not just an accident. Most likely, these events were destined by fate itself. And didn't it seem strange to Fang Miao that her friend never denied the mutual connection and played along every time? As it turns out, Hong and the girl with dark hair are sisters. Who would have thought that such a weakling as Yi Tian could win her heart? However, Fang Miao immediately began to deny everything. In fact, she doesn't like him at all and their relationship is just a simple misunderstanding. Meanwhile, the lady continued to think about why the guy called her by an unfamiliar name. This was clearly not an ordinary accident. Most likely, the woman was also somehow connected with the hero, but so far the details are completely unknown. Qing Lan realized at this moment that she really had a chance to get Yi Tian as a boyfriend. Now she liked him even more. Meanwhile, outside the city, several houses were being destroyed. An excavator worker wanted to demolish everything in his path. At some point, all the walls fell and turned into bricks, but one of the houses still stood in place. The boss could not understand why this was happening. One of the workers explained to him that they could not demolish this building, because the family was still inside, and besides, the little girl was interfering with the work. However, the man didn't even want to hear these excuses. If they were ordered to destroy everything here to the ground, then they must do it as soon as possible. The boss was so angry that he even hit one of his subordinates in the face with his palm. He behaved very rudely and disrespectfully. Immediately after this, a huge machine approached straight to the house where there were still people inside. Would they really do this? At some point, the boss again became furious. Some fool dared to block their excavator. Was he really tired of living? As it turned out, it was Lin Long. She couldn't allow them to do this, because their family has been living here for many years, and they just want to demolish everything. This stupid girl should have at least found out which company was behind all this before she acted so rashly. However, the student was not interested in the details. The fact was that this was happening against the laws of their country and without their consent. The man was very amused by these words. This stupid thing apparently doesn't know at all what rules this world works by. The boss understands that this girl can immediately retreat if she is intimidated a little. Was this part of the rules by which she lives? The student immediately grabbed the villain's hand and ordered him to immediately let go of her cheeks, otherwise she would call the police. Because of this, the man laughed hard and brought this to the attention of his subordinates. This fool really wants to call the police. And the other workers were also amused by this. Lin Long really behaved quite ridiculously in their opinion. In fact, from the outside it looked disgusting. After this, the men began to behave in an even more inappropriate manner, which made the student very scared. Tears even appeared in her eyes. She didn't know who to turn to. In fact, there was only one person who could help her. Yi Tian, meanwhile, was calmly walking down the corridor, but this time everyone passing by him, for some reason, called him by name and greeted him. The hero could not understand why everyone around him was acting so strangely, because there had been no significant events recently. Suddenly Zhang approached him and said that now the guy had become a real legend of their school. Now every student respected him. However, Yi Tian did not fully understand how this happened, because he was always trying to act secretly, how this could happen. But in fact, there were more important things to do now. In the hands of his comrade there was now an envelope. It was intended for the hero. Zhang found this paper when he entered the classroom. It seems it was from Ling Long, because she was currently in big trouble with a construction company. As soon as the guy heard the name of his girlfriend, he immediately wanted to read the letter. If something happened to her, he would not restrain himself. This paper described the whole situation that happened with the girl's house. She does not know who she can turn to for help. At this moment, Yi Tian remembers his past life. When everyone bullied him, then only Ling Long was brave enough to stand up for him. Zhang noticed that his comrade was suddenly thinking about something. For the first time in a long time his expression was quite sad. Apparently this girl really means a lot to him. But after a few seconds the hero comes to his senses and asks his friend if he knows where Lin Long's house is. They should go to her aid as soon as possible. The friends immediately went to the indicated address. Yi Tian had never been so determined to sort out this whole situation. He should never offend a dear person. At some point, the hero even started to run. His comrade, in turn, could not keep up with him and asked him to wait a little. Most likely such a rush was unnecessary. Ling Long had protected him with all her might in the past, so the guy was forever obliged to respond in kind. Even if the emperor himself dared to touch her, he wanted to be shattered into pieces. Now his girlfriend could only wait for Yi Tian's arrival. Soon he would move to the right place and then anyone who dared to offend her would regret that he was ever born into this world. The fastest way to get there was a car. For this the hero used a special service. His friend asked him not to rush so much, because this way they could get into an accident. But in reality, it was impossible to waste seconds, because at any moment the girl's house could be demolished, after which her family would have nowhere to live, and these scoundrels should not be given a chance. Yi Tian pressed the gas pedal all the way. He wasn't even interested in traffic rules, so other cars had to avoid colliding with the car. Zhang was very scared. His friend was driving just badly. Now it became clear why he still doesn't have a license. With such skills no inspector will pass his exam. However, the guy rushed to reassure him. In fact, he had nothing to worry about. He would never allow dangerous situations to happen. After all, his brother is very dear to him. In fact, it was very difficult to believe, because they had already miraculously avoided a serious accident several times. At this rate, they would definitely not be able to get to the indicated point. Meanwhile, a little boy appeared near the excavator. It was Lin Long's brother. He also went outside to prevent the destruction of his home. Let them just try to do it. The man was very amused by this picture. Just look at this brat. Apparently he has seen enough of all sorts of hero films and now imagines himself as the main hero. Suddenly the boss orders his wards to immediately grab this child and knock a little sense into him. Maybe this way he will have at least a little sense. The next moment, several men grabbed the little boy by the arms and dragged him away. The child struggled to break free and screamed. These scoundrels did not react to this. Lin Long was very scared for her little brother. She ordered the villain to let them go immediately. Don't they understand that right now they are breaking several laws at once? However, the boss didn't even answer anything to this. He simply approached the child and recommended that in the future he should think more with his head before building himself into a hero. With his entire appearance, this man made it clear that the laws were not written to him, because he is the boss on this site, and this means that he can do whatever comes into his head. The boy replied that only fools do not obey the law. How would he feel if everyone in the world behaved haphazardly? It would be simply terrible. The boss was very indignant because of this behavior. This brat also allows himself to behave in this way. Right now he should be taught the correct manners. At that moment, the girl ordered her brother to be released immediately, otherwise she would immediately call the police. They would come here and punish these hooligans. When the man heard this, he came close to her. Didn't she still understand that all her actions were useless? They should just come to terms with their situation. Right at that moment, the hero came to the rescue. With one deft kick, he sent this scoundrel high into the air. Now the real owner has appeared here. Because of this, the man landed directly on a metal excavator. After such a fall he most likely will not be able to walk for several months. It will be useful for him to think about his actions. Right now, everyone who was going to harm this family will be punished. If they want to leave here alive, then they should immediately fall to their knees and beg for mercy. Soon, several assistants helped the man to his feet. He really had a hard time. He even lost consciousness for several minutes. He also had several teeth knocked out. The first thing he wanted to know was what it was all about and who this impudent student was. Was he really tired of living? The boy realized that Yi Tian had come to their aid and told him everything that these bad people were going to do to him. They were not only harassing his sister, but also him. The guy decided to ask the boy again whether these builders really tried to humiliate his girlfriend in some way. He wanted to know the most accurate information possible. After that, he asked Lin Long herself if everything was okay with her and if his friend could stand on her own. The girl said that everything was fine with her and that she was not in danger. While the workers were threatening a small child, a hero appeared right behind them. Now they will find out what the consequences of bad actions can be, how they could even call themselves men. Yi Tian put his hand on the shoulder of one of them and asked him to once again repeat the words he had said a minute earlier, whether he really wanted to beat the defenseless boy. The man was very scared because of this. How did this student manage to move behind him so quickly? These scoundrels were so unscrupulous that they only thought about their own protection. The boss, meanwhile, climbed into the cab of the excavator and drove straight towards the guy. So he wanted to put an end to this upstart once and for all. He definitely wouldn't have anything to answer against. However, Yi Tian was not at all afraid and continued to stand in the same place as a minute ago. His face looked very confident. Such tricks would never work on him. Right now, the man lowered a huge iron ladle directly onto the hero. It seemed to him that after this, not a single living person could survive. However, the guy instantly disappeared somewhere, so a huge pile of iron simply hit the ground. The boss achieved nothing with his actions. Meanwhile, the guy grabbed a huge hammer that was lying nearby. With the help of this thing he can instantly destroy anything he wants. If only his enemies knew what awaited them now. Lin Long was right now watching what was happening from the side. She was very worried about her comrade and kept shouting to him to be careful. What a pity that she couldn't help in any way. And the man, in turn, laughed at the fact that the schoolboy picked up a hammer. How such a thing could withstand an entire excavator. It seems this guy turned out to be even stupider than expected. Immediately after this, Yi Tian rushed at a huge iron machine. From the outside it looked simply crazy, but the hero understood perfectly well what he was doing. The rest of the workers watched this exciting performance from the side. Everyone was wondering what this crazy student was going to do. And the boy was surprised at how Yi Tian managed to hold such a heavy hammer with one hand, because all the other people could hardly handle it with two. Moreover, the hero not only held it in his hands, he managed to play with this thing like a toy. He spun it with incredible speed in his palm. But the boss didn't pay attention to this. The man was confident in his victory. It seems that this brat just at some point went crazy with fear and is now doing rash things. Right now, he pointed a huge iron ladle towards the guy for the second time. Could this eccentric withstand such a blow without escaping? Yi Tian accepts this challenge. In fact, with the help of his unique spiritual chaos energy, it will not be difficult for him to strengthen his body to such an extent that it becomes harder than metal. But at some point he gets bored of just standing still, so the guy jumps high up. Now he had the opportunity to strike the enemy's blind spot. Right now this villain will feel the full power of justice. He should remember this moment well, because if this happens again, it will happen to him constantly. The man realized that his opponent was now directly above him and tried to steer the mechanism in such a way as to avoid a collision. But in reality, he didn't have a chance. Yi Tian moved 100 times faster. He easily managed to completely destroy the mechanism. At that moment, the boss realized that he was in serious trouble. He didn't even have a chance to escape somewhere. He could only scream helplessly in horror. Within a few moments, a heavy hammer broke the glass in his cabin and hit him directly on the shoulder. The pain was incredibly strong. However, the hero did not think that such punishment would be enough for him, because this scoundrel allows himself to take advantage of his position and humiliate the weak at the first opportunity. All the spectators were shocked by what they saw. Did this guy really have superhuman capabilities? Because an ordinary mortal would never be able to repeat something like that. And Zhang only just managed to get to the scene of the incident, as it turned out that all this time he had been trying to find a suitable place to park their car. However, his help was no longer needed. Yi Tian managed to deal with all the villains in a few minutes. Lin Long could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Her friend was truly capable of doing incredible things, but she simply could not calmly watch all these fights.